In this project, we will be creating a farming RPG. We will be playing as a farmer and be tasked with taking care of a farm and earning money. Some of the actions we will be implementing for the farmer is planting plants, chopping trees, mining rocks, fighting enemies, fishing, cooking, and many more. We will also be implementing an inventory system so that you can pick and choose which items you want to use. Another system we will be adding is one to keep track of in-game time. With that, we're also going to add a day-night cycle that darkens the world as time gets later. On top of all that, we will also be adding the ability to purchase animals such as chickens and cows that will help produce certain resources. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. In this section, we're going to go ahead and do some planning for our farming RPG. We're going to start off viewing the entire game as a whole. Then we're going to go ahead and go over how certain components will work and what to expect from them. Then we're going to go ahead and picture how certain systems will be created. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, this here is going to represent the entire planning for our farming RPG. We're going to have 3 different sections. The middle one here is going to represent the main game screen. The one on the left is going to represent the player inventory. The one on the right is going to represent the player house/animal interactions. Let's start off with the main game screen. As seen in the main game screen, we are going to be playing as this player here in the center of the screen. We will be able to move up, down, left, and right, and also use the selected item we currently have. To view and then also select other items that we currently have, we have to use the hotbar below, which is a UI item. Once the item is selected, it'll highlight the current box and of course the current item we're using. We're also going to have some UIs on the top left and right. The one on the top left here is going to represent our player's current energy and health. If either one of those runs out all the way, then the player is going to pass out and the next day will begin. The UI on the right is going to represent the current time and the current day. As the time gets later, the nighttime hours will appear and the whole world will darken a bit to resemble a more realistic feel for the game. If, of course, the nighttime hour reaches the limit, such as 11 p.m., the player will currently pass out and the next day will begin. Other things to mention in the main game screen is the crop field. In this field, we will be able to, of course, plant new crops by tilling the field, and then over time, the plants will grow from the saved value and if they're watered or not. We're also going to have certain body of waters that you can fish in. Once you start fishing with the fishing pole, a simple mini game will appear and you will have the chance to catch new fishes and collect them. You will also have a house that you'll be able to interact with by going in the front door, and then a chest right next to it where you can drop off your items to be sold the next day. Let's go ahead and move on to the player inventory now. Once you open up the player inventory, you're going to have a grid here showcasing all your current items. All the current items are going to be displaying from a global variable that represents an array. You're going to have the ability to switch out the location of certain items by simply selecting one box and then the other box that you want to transfer it to. In the player inventory, if you collect new items, then they're either going to fill out a certain stack you have that already has that item, and if there is not a stack already, then it's simply going to find the next box that is not filled. Let's go ahead and move on to the player house/animals. Once you go inside of the player house, it's going to close out the previous scene and open up the house scene. In the house scene, there's going to be a couple things you could do, such as interact with the bed. Once you interact with the bed, then you're going to have the choice to basically skip the certain day and start the next one. You're also going to have a kitchen that you can interact with and create new items. Just like collecting an item, if you create a new item, it'll of course take away the ones you need to make it, and then add in whichever new item you created. To leave the house, you'll simply just have to go outside the door, and it will close out the inside house scene. Then, as for the barn coop for the animals, you will have to purchase them from this NPC. Once you interact with the NPC, you can then spend the money to buy the barn or coop. Once you have either the barn or coop, then you can start to buy new animals. The new animals will give you a random chance to generate either eggs or milk, depending on the chance ratio you give them. Everything here, of course, is going to be our planning. You can review it more if you want to, but so far I think we're looking good, and let's jump right into the game development. Alright, in this section, we're going to set up everything we need for our farming RPG. We're going to start off by creating a new project. Then we're going to go ahead and add multiple folders for the art and other components. Last but not least, we're going to import all the art/sprites being used. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, let's go ahead and create our new project. So on the top left, we're going to go ahead, select Create. Let's give it a name. I'm going to call this Farming RPG. Leave everything else the same and go ahead and select Create and Edit. Alright, once your project's loaded up, let's go ahead and create a couple folders. And before we do that, we can even go ahead and select in the 2D view because that's where we're going to be for the most part of this game. Alright, so let's go ahead and add some of the folders. So we're going to right click on our rest folder, create new folder. First one we're going to create, we're going to call it art. This is going to hold all of our assets. So let's go ahead, add that art one. Let's also select it and right click and change the color of it as well, just to help it organize. Let's go ahead and find that color button, set folder color. I'm going to make this one red. Awesome. Let's add some more folders. Right click, create new folder. All right, this one's going to be called buildings. Let's go ahead, add that. Perfect. Let's give it a color also. This one I'm going to set to be purple. Perfect. Let's create another folder. This one we're going to go ahead and call it characters. Awesome. Let's change the color. I'm going to set this color to yellow. And you can make these colors whatever you want. I'm just going to make them all different ones so we can keep things organized. All right. So for the next one, let's go ahead and call this one plants. Let's hit OK. Perfect. Let's give it a color. I'm going to set the color to green for this one. Awesome. All right. Let's go ahead, right click again, create new folder. We're going to call this one now UI. Awesome. Let's give it a color as well. I'm going to set this one to blue. Perfect. Let's add another one. This one is going to be called objects. Awesome. And if you guessed it, basically we're going to put all the specific titles of whatever thing we save in each one of these. So our art will go in art, buildings will go in building, and then of course everything else for the other ones. All right. This one here, let's see what we could do. We could do pink for this one. All right, awesome. All right, make sure you have all these folders here. One for art, one for buildings, one for characters, one for objects, one for plants, and another one for UI. And we should be good. Save what you got so far, and looking good. All right, next thing we're going to do is download all the art we're going to be using. We're going to be using two different asset packs. The first one is going to be called Sunnyside World. And this one is created by Daniel Diggle at .itch.io. You can download it for free there. You can also donate to them as well. This is going to be everything we're using for the entire world, so such as the plants, the buildings, the water, basically everything else as you can see here. We're not going to be using the characters in this set, and that is because the current characters in this set are not up, down, left, right. They're only left and right. All right, we're going to be using another asset pack for those ones. But before we do that, go ahead, select download now, name your price. Remember, this can be free if you want it to be. So go ahead and download that. The other asset pack we're going to be using is going to be called the Ninja Adventure Pack. It's going to also be at itch.io, and this one is designed by Pixel Boy. All right. This one is going to have a bunch of different characters and animals we can use also. The reason why we're using this one, again, is because I like that the characters are up, down, left, right. It fits really well. Because it's not really a farming style asset pack, we're not going to be using the world pack in this. If you wanted to, you could, but because the other one has more of a farm style, that's why we're using that. All right. So go ahead, select download now for this one as well, and wait for those to download. All right, once both your downloads are complete, you're going to have two .zips. You're going to have the Sunnyside World.zip, and you're also going to have the Ninja Adventure Asset Pack.zip. So go ahead, select each one, and then right click and extract all. Put them into their own new folder. I named mine the Farming RPG Assets folder. You're going to have 3 things in there once you extract everything from each one. We're only going to worry about 2 though. which of course is the Ninja Adventure Pack, and then also the Sunnyside World Assets Pack. Now we don't need everything inside of the Sunnyside World Asset Pack, so go ahead and select into that one first, and then go into the Sunnyside World Assets. And the only thing we're going to need in here is actually going to be the tile set. So select the tile set, and you should see this big one right here. This is the only thing we're going to need from the Sunnyside World Assets Pack. All right, so go ahead and take that and just drag and drop it into the art folder right over here. Might take a second or two. Sometimes when you drag and drop it, it kind of miscalculates where it's going, like it just did. It accidentally put it in the objects one. So go ahead and just move it into the art one. And there you go. Perfect. Then what you're going to want to do is move the entire Ninja Adventure Assets Pack into the art folder, because we are going to need a lot of things in there. All right, so let's go ahead and reopen that up, which is going to be up here. Let's move this up. Go ahead and find the Ninja Adventure Assets Pack, select into it. Awesome. But we want this whole thing, so what we can do is simply just take the actual main folder, drag and drop it, make sure it's going into the art one. This one's a little bigger, so it's going to take a little bit longer. If we select somewhere else on here, you should see it start to load. This is a pretty big one, so it's going to take a minute or two. Let's let that load. And it should be in there. If not, it should be loading. I'm going to minimize that. Yep, there we go. Importing assets. Going to take a second or two. Hopefully it went into the art one. If it didn't, we'll just simply move it over. Let's let that load. And there we go. Awesome. The Ninja Adventure Assets Pack should be in there, which if you open it up, it has everything. Perfect. Awesome. All right, let's close that up and close up the art folder. Remember, you just need the Ninja Adventure Assets Pack in here and just the tile set from the Sunnyside World one. All right, I'm going to close that. And then all we got to do is just save what we got. Control S. Looking good so far. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the main scene and set some of the project settings. We're going to start off creating that main scene node. Then we're going to add one node in there for the entire world that's going to be created. Then we're going to go ahead and set those project settings for the specific type of top-down game we're making. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is create a 2D scene. So let's select 2D scene here on the left. Awesome. Let's rename that. I'm going to call this main, capital M. Perfect. Now everything inside of our game is going to be inside this main node. We also need to add one more node in here as well. So right click, add child node. We're going to add another node 2D. And this is going to be everything in the world map. All right, so I'm just going to call this world. Okay, awesome. All right, from here, go ahead and save that. It's going to ask you where do you want to save it. I think a good location is going to be buildings. So go ahead, find your building folder, select it, and then just save it. You should see it inside of your buildings folder now, just like this. Perfect. All right, next thing we're going to do is set some things in the project settings. Now the reason we're going to do this is just because it's going to make the game look a little better and run a little better as well. So let's go to project settings. First thing we're going to set is going to be inside the window, which is under display. So go ahead and find that and select it. We're going to leave mostly everything the same here, but we are going to go ahead and select that mode under stretch. All right, we're simply going to set that from disabled to canvas items. Now this is going to help the canvas items basically stretch when we stretch the screen. All right, you'll see that in action once we start creating some of the UI. So make sure you have that set there. The next thing we're going to set is going to be in the 2D, which is going to be under rendering. All right, because we're using a lot of 2D styled pixels, such as a 16 by 16 for almost all the characters and the items in the world, we want to make sure we set these snap 2D transforms to pixel. This is going to help it kind of stop looking like it's flickering when we're moving the character along with the camera. So it's very important we have this set on to make the game look good. All right, awesome. So once you have that done, go ahead, close that, save what you got again, and looking good so far. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the map for our farm RPG. We're going to start off creating a bunch of tile map layers for the water, land, forest, and everything else. We're going to then go ahead and place the tiles to design all the areas needed for the world. After that, we're going to ensure borders are added for where the player cannot walk. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating the world with a bunch of Tilemap layers. All right, so let's select our world node right here, right click, add child node, then type in tile, and you should see the Tilemap layer. Make sure you're using this one and not the Tilemap. This is the updated version, so let's select that. Let's go to create, perfect. Then let's go ahead and select it again. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this one water. All right, this is going to be the lowest level. So let's select water, awesome. Then let's go ahead to tile set, select the empty, new tile set. Then we can pull this up here. Go to the tile set. Now we just need to drag and drop in our tile set. If you remember, that's going to be inside of our art folder here on the left. Let's open that up. It's going to be the one from Sunnyside World. So let's go ahead, drag and drop that in. It's going to ask you if you want to modify it. Go ahead and select no, because we're not going to need everything in here. So let's go ahead, zoom out a bit. Let's find the water one. That's going to be this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight the whole thing. Go ahead, just go all the way around. Just like that, perfect. Awesome. All right, so we can keep that as that for now. Then let's go ahead and go to Tile Map button here on the bottom. You're going to see this is now highlighted. So let's go ahead and select it with the square. And just go like that. Perfect. Let's zoom out a bit. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make a big square of water, which is going to be basically the entire world of our game. All right. And it doesn't really matter where you start, as long as you're somewhere pretty up high, somewhat over here, and simply just stretch it out and make a big square. All right. Awesome. And if we zoom in, we'll see exactly the water. Perfect. So now we're going to build some land that the player can actually walk on top of. So let's go ahead. Let's right click on world, add child node. And let's go ahead and let's just select tile map layer again. And then let's rename this land. All right. Awesome. All right. So for land, let's go ahead and get some land on there. I'm going to select it. We're going to go ahead and do exactly what we did with the other one. Drag and drop tile set in there. Well, we might have to add it first. There we go. Go to tile set, drag and drop. Yes, and there is another way we can do this too as well, which might be a little bit easier. You can do it the way we just did, or you can go ahead and just delete it, hit OK. Simply select the water, Control D, and then just rename it from there so we don't have to do anything we just did before. All right. Now the one thing we do need to do though is remove everything on it. So make sure you're selecting land. Use that rectangle tool and select eraser, and then simply go ahead and just remove everything in there. All right, perfect. Go back to tile set. Now we need to highlight exactly what we want for the land. Now I'm going to just use a plain grass one for now, which I think is going to be this color right up here. It's going to be right next to the sand color. This is the lighter one, the darker one's over here, but I'm going to use the lighter one. All right, so I'm going to select that. Perfect. Tile map. I'm going to go ahead, turn off the eraser, still hold down the square. Select this here, perfect. Now let's go ahead and create some land area. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a few different spots. One spot is going to be for the actual farm itself where we can plant things on. So I'm going to do that as the first square here. Okay. Then I might have another building that we're going to make later on, somewhere like over here. Perfect. And then why not? We're going to have another square down here. And this one is going to be for basically any of the nature stuff we want to go find. All right, I'm going to make it a little bigger down here. Perfect. And then a cool little connecting spot we will add to each one as well. And you can customize this however you want. I just think this works really well for what we're going to be making. All right, awesome. So make sure you have that there. Perfect. So now that we have land, now we need to give it some edges to make it look a little more natural. We can do that simply with the ones over here. So let's go to tile set. Let's highlight every single one that we're going to need. I think there's a better one if you scroll down. It's going to be a little cliffside, which looks just like this. All right. So let's go ahead and highlight everything. So highlight the ones going all the way around, just like that. Perfect. The ones over here as well. And these ones, and these ones. Awesome. All right, good. Now let's go ahead and just place them in. There might be a little bit of a water one we can use too, which I think is going to be these ones. So we can add those, or maybe even these ones here. Yeah, these look better. So I'm going to highlight these as well. All right. And then those. Perfect. Awesome. And I think there's a side one we can do as well. It could be like these ones and this one. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead, back to Tilemap. Let's simply start off with the ones at the bottom over here. Let's just go all the way around on each island. So I'm going to take this first, and I'm simply going to do this here, go all the way down. Might need to zoom in a little bit. Looks like I did too many. You can Control Z to go back. Let's see if that's good. Yep, that'll be good there. So just go all the way down for each side. Perfect. And we're going to go all the way over here. All the way here. All the way here. And some over here as well. And over here, perfect. I think those are all the left side ones. Yep. So let's go ahead. Let's do the right side ones now. Whoopsie, looks like I'm selecting too many things. There we go. I'm going to change these ones here. And these ones over here as well. Let's see what else. These ones I can change. These ones as well. And of course the ones over here. Can do these ones as well. And these ones as well. Perfect. Awesome. All right, now that we got all of the right sides, let's do the bottom ones now, which is going to be here. So I'm going to take that and just go all the way. Just like that. Awesome. We'll put a corner piece on the corner so you don't have to worry about those right now. Let's just go all the way over, all the way over, all the way over. And then don't forget the ones here. And I think we're okay. Awesome. Now we just need to do the top ones. So let's select the top one. Let's do all of the top ones. Just like that. Just like that. Just like that. Just like that. And just like that. Perfect. Looks like I did too many on the top. Let's do it again. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So now we just need to do some of the corners. So it's going to be like this one here. What other corners do we have? Technically that corner. But we might just keep that. Yeah, we'll have to do it like that. Okay. Whoopsie. I think that's good over there. We'll have to do one over there. Any other of those type corners? Whoops. Or you know what? A better way to do this would probably just to be go around. So we'll just do every individual one as we can see it. One over there, one over there. Don't forget these corners up here. One over there. Awesome. What else? We got corners over here. We got these corners as well. So we'll have to do something like that. Perfect. Perfect. We'll do a corner over there. We'll do one over here. Another over here. Another over here. Another over there. Another over here. Perfect. And this is the last one. Oopsie. We just had to fix up the middle part now. So if we go back to the grass, select the grass one, which is of course these little ones here. There we go. Yep, that's good over there. These ones need to be fixed. There we go. Awesome. Let's see, are all these looking good now? That looks good. I think we got them all. Awesome. Yep, perfect. Corners, awesome. All right, now we need to wrap up the lower part. So if we scroll down again, we're going to get some down over here. So let's go ahead and we're simply just going to do one layer on the bottom. Awesome, and I don't think there's any side ones or any top ones. So we just need to do the lower parts. So we have, well, looks like I did the wrong, that was the corner one, so I think it's like that. Yeah, and this one goes there though. Just like that, perfect. And I think we need a little corner piece, which is like that. There we go. Awesome, I think that's good for there. Maybe we do one here. No, I think it looks better with like that. There we go, perfect, a lot better. Awesome. All right, and then here we go like this. And then we do this one here. And then I think it goes like a corner again, just like that, perfect. And then again, like I said, corner, whoopsie, wrong corner. That one might not need a corner though. Or if it does, it might be like this one. Maybe not. Let's get rid of that. Let's do this one first. And let's see, so we have that one. I guess we need one of them. I think it's just the opposite. Yep, just like that. Oopsie. There we go. And over here, is it like that? Nope. I think it's this one. Yep. And then we go ahead, go like that. Same thing over here. Perfect. Awesome, looking great there, looking great, looks a lot better. Now I need to do the bottom half and I think we should be okay. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead, give it the corner, perfect. Go all the way down like that, perfect. Awesome. There we go, oopsie. Don't forget to add that corner, perfect. So now we have our land, looks good there. It's connecting. I like how it looks like it's in the water now. Now, if you wanted to add those little water things, you could even put sand under it. We could add these real quick just to make it look a little better. That's kind of up to you though. Like if we wanted to add like that there instead, or if you wanted to do like this, that would be kind of cool. But that's kind of completely up to you. I might just add this since it's pretty easy. Just simply all the way across. Just like that, and then this one here, just like that, perfect. We could do the same thing over here. There's one. There's, oopsie. There's two. There's three. There's four. And just drag that along. Perfect. Drag that along. Awesome. Let's just add the rest of those. I like it. Add that there, and there, over there, and over there. Perfect. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I like that a lot. Awesome. Perfect. So now we have the water, we have the land. Now we just need some spots for farming, and I think we should be okay. All right. So let's go ahead and use, actually let's just duplicate this one here, the land. Remember, every time we duplicate it, it's going to duplicate all the tiles on it too. So go ahead, use that eraser, and just simply highlight over everything. Make sure you're selecting 2. Perfect. Change this. Let's call this soil. Zoom into the farming section. And let's go ahead. Let's do a soil one. I don't think we selected one of those yet, so let's go to tile set. Zoom out a little bit, go to the left. It's going to be this one right here, or it could be this one as well. I'm just going to select that one there. Is it the same color? I think it should be. Yeah. Let's go to Tilemap. Remember, selecting soil. Select the soil. And I'm simply just going to add like a little soil spot right here. So let's go ahead, make sure you're doing the square. And I'm just going to go like this. And this kind of area is where we are going to be allowed to actually plant some plants. So I'm going to do it right there. Perfect. Now, another thing to make this look a little better is adding the edges. So I'm actually going to create another layer for that. So Control D. And I'm going to call this soil edges. All right, perfect. Let's use the eraser tool, erase the current soil we have. Awesome. Select soil edges, go to tile set again, and we want to select all these ones here. So let's go ahead, we can select these corner ones, the ones above, and then the right and left ones as well. So we have the right, left, we have the one on the bottom. Now we just need the one on the top, which I think is this one. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead. Maybe the bottom corners too as well. Let's go ahead and do this now. So let's go ahead, go to Tilemap. Let's do the corners first. I'm gonna select this here. Make sure you don't have eraser. So we have that one there. So we are gonna need to remove that corner, which we can do in a bit. I'm gonna take that over there. I'll do this one over here and this one over here. Awesome. And then, like I said, we have to remove the soil one. So go to the soil and just remove the corners so it doesn't look bad. Perfect. Select soil edges again, turn off eraser, and then let's add the corners. So I'm going to take these corners just like that. Perfect. It looks a little nicer. Take this one over here. Awesome. And let's do the top one. Perfect. And the left side. All right. And there's our soil. Awesome. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and change the soil, maybe make it have a little bit of different spots on it. That's completely up to you. I might go ahead and select soil. And what I'm talking about is these little spots here to make it look a little more natural. So if you wanted to do that, you could just go ahead. Of course, you need to highlight the ones you want to use. So I'm just going to highlight all these. Perfect. Go to Tilemap. And you can go ahead and just select one or two and just start placing them a little bit all over the place. There's also a little button here that will randomize it for you. You could use that as well. I like to kind of just manually do it though, just because it looks a little nicer, I think. Just like that, maybe over there. Perfect. Awesome. All right, looking good. All right, so now we got the water, we got the land, we got the soil edges. I think we're looking pretty good. All right, there's one more thing we could do, and this is something you can just continually add. We're actually going to use the water one here and duplicate this one. You'll see why in just a bit. Control D it, take that water, go ahead and remove everything on it currently. Then go ahead and select it. We're going to call it Sparkle. Or we could just call it, actually, we can call it just like water dots. All right, perfect. For water dots, let's select that. Let's go to Tile Set. Now, one cool thing we can do in here is we can make simple animations with the tiles. So these little water dots, we can turn this into its own animation. So go ahead and use the Select key. Select the first one here. We might have to use Setup first. Then use Select. Select this one. Go to Animation. And here we can go ahead and give it an animation. All right, so if we go to Frames, select Add Element, it'll now add this into an animation. All right, so keep doing that until you get to the last one, which is right there. Perfect. If you want to slow down the animation or speed it up, you totally can by adjusting the seconds here. But now, if we go ahead and we go to Tilemap and you select this here and start to paste these around. So if we go ahead, make sure you're not on Eraser Tool, and just put these down here, it's going to have this little animation. All right, and I just think this gives the game a little bit more life. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these all around the island, just like that. Perfect. And again, it's up to you how you want to do it. I just like putting it down like this. I don't exactly like when they're right next to each other like that. So I'm going to remove that. You can use the randomizing one if you want to, but I'm just going to go ahead and dot it all over. All right, just like that, just because it looks pretty cool. Maybe in the game you could add something where if you fish on these dotted spots, it'll give you something nice, but I just like how it makes it look a little bit more alive. And you can do the same thing with other plants if you wanted. So like if you wanted little like sunflowers or other types of flowers just kind of around animating, you totally could do that. All right, awesome. But I think it looks pretty good with that. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to select land now. All right, so everything looks good there. What we got to do now is add the actual edges so the player can't just instantly walk into the water. So save what you got so far. All right, let's make those edges now. So there's two ways we can do this. We can actually add a physical layer to individual tiles that we want, but I think there's a better way of doing that because that takes quite a bit of time. The better way to do it, I find, is actually just go ahead and select one of our layers, make sure it's on the top one, Control D, and we're going to call this borders. All right, for borders, let's go ahead and erase everything on it currently. Let's get rid of everything we got on borders. Perfect. Let's go ahead, select borders again, go to tile set. Now we want to have a dedicated tile that's going to have specific borders on it, all right? So I think a good one we can use is going to be, let's use something we're probably not going to use in here. This can be really anything, but I'm going to go ahead and just use one of the squares, such as something we can see like this little one here, all right? So let's go ahead and make sure this is a tile. Perfect. Go to select the tile, and now what we want to do is we want to go to paint, and we want to go ahead and add a layer to it, all right? Now the reason it's not showing up here is because we haven't selected it in the main one, so make sure you're selecting borders. Go over here to the tile set, select the tile set to open it up, go to physical layers, and just simply add a physical layer, all right? Awesome. Once you do that, then we can go ahead, reselect things, select the drop down, select the physical layer, and what we're going to do is now just select it, and see that blue box around it? That's going to be our physical layer, all right? So basically the player is not going to be able to walk through this. Now, like I said before, we could add this to each individual one, and that's completely okay if you want to do that. I think that takes kind of a bit of time, so I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it another way. But for instance, if we go down to where our borders were for our land, such as the ones here, you could go ahead and select one here and then just adjust it. So like, for instance, we don't want the player to walk past this spot, so you could go ahead and just do that, reselect it, and there you go. All right, so now the player won't be able to walk past that spot. Same thing for all these other ones, such as the one up here. Maybe you don't want the player to walk past that part on the top, so you can just adjust it and just put a little bit of a border right there, okay? Select it again, and there you go. All right, so if you wanted to do it that way, you totally could. I'm not going to do it that way because I would have to do that for each one, and I think there's a bit of a faster way to do that. All right, so I'm going to remove them just like that. Perfect. I'm going to go back to that spot I picked above, and you'll see how I'm doing this. So remember, this one still is bordered with blue, which is great. If you reselect it without it, though, it's going to cause an issue. So make sure you do that, and then go ahead, select it, and then redo it in case you just did what I did. So let's go ahead and just re-add it on there to make sure we're looking good. All right, reselect it. There we go. Awesome. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're simply going to go ahead to Tilemap. I'm going to select our one there. Make sure you're not erasing. Awesome. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace where I want these to be. So for instance, I don't want the player to walk anywhere over there. So I'm going to add a bunch there. I'm going to add one there. And I'm just going to go all the way down. All right. All the way down. I'm going to put one there, all the way over here, all the way over here, and just kind of go all the way around. All right. Remember, you can do it the other way if you want to. I just kind of like this way a little better because then, for instance, if I want to use other tiles and I don't want to just have to go back in there and adjust them every single time, I find this way a lot better. And if you guessed it, though, we are actually going to make this one invisible. So even though it's completely covering certain parts of the map, we are going to go ahead and just make this not visible. So even though we know it's there, the player will not know it's there. All right, let's go ahead, add all this there, and just keep going all the way around. Just keep going all the way around. Oopsie. Let me go over there and there. All the way until we go around the entire map. Let's keep going over there. Perfect, almost done. Keep it going. Keep it going. Almost done. Perfect. Awesome. So that's going to be our border for the game. So we're not going to be able to walk anywhere past these blocks. All right. But we still want to see everything in the game. So make sure you're selecting borders. Go on down to visibility. And just simply, you can either turn off the visibility like that, or a better way I find it is just select self-modulate and just make that A value go all the way down like that. Perfect. Because sometimes if you make the visibility off, it'll start messing with whether or not the actual layer map is turned off, which we don't want that. We want it to still be active because it's representing our borders. All right, perfect. Awesome. All right, save what you got there, and looking good so far. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the player's sprite. We're going to start off creating a new node for the player. Then we're going to go ahead and add all the sprites and animations for idle, walking, and using tools. Last but not least, we're going to add any collision boxes and timers for future functions. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started creating the player. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to Scene, New Scene, Other Node, and this is going to be a character body 2D. So select the character body 2D, hit create, perfect. All right, let's rename this. We're going to call this player. Just like that, awesome. Let's zoom in a little bit over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the main player node. We're going to change a couple things. First thing, of course, is going to be the motion mode, which is grounded. We are going to make this floating because this is a top-down style game. If it was a platform style game, we would make grounding, but for that, we'll keep it at floating for this type of game. All right. The other thing we're going to change in here is going to be the collision. This is basically going to allow our player to kind of bump into things and move around them easier. So we're going to make this just a 5. All right. We might adjust this later, but we're going to keep it at 5 so we don't forget. All right. And for now, I think we can keep everything else the same here, which is great. All right. So now we're going to add a couple other things inside of the player. And that's going to be things such as the tools, such as the body sprites, hitboxes, and then some other UI things down the road. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is create the body, which is going to have the sprites and animations in it. Let's do that real quick. Let's right click, add child node, and let's go ahead. We're going to add a node 2D for now. We're going to change the name to body. Perfect. All right. So in the body, we're going to add a couple things. First thing we're going to add is going to be a color rect. And the reason why we're doing this is because it's going to kind of help us have a little bit of a hitbox on the player. All right. So let's center this up real quick. I'm going to put it somewhere right here. Doesn't need to be perfect. You'll see why in just a bit. Let's rename this. This is going to be called the hurt color. All right, perfect. Now for the hurt color, we're going to go ahead, and what we're going to do is we are going to go to the visibility. We're going to make the modulate be invisible for now, all right? Which is going to look just like that. Let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to right click, add child node. We're going to add now an animated sprite 2D, all right? So animated sprite 2D, this is going to have all of our animations and of course the sprites. So let's add that there, perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to center this up because clearly we're not centered. Awesome. Let's go ahead. Let's keep the name as that, that's fine. But what we are going to do is select it, go to the inspector, to animation. We are going to add a new sprite frames, select that as well, and there we go, perfect. So now let's go ahead and add a couple things in here, such as the idle animations. So currently we have default right here. Let's get rid of that and call it something like idle front. All right, this is going to represent the front idle animation. Perfect. Let's go to this little button right here. This is going to add some frames. And what we're going to be using is we're going to be going into our art folder. So let me go all the way up so you can see where we start off at. These are all of our folders, of course. We're going to go into art, Ninja Adventure Assets Pack, actors, characters, and then from here you can select any character you want. There's quite a few in here, so go ahead and use your favorite. I'm just going to be using the simple boy one right here. I'm going to select the sprite sheet, open, and there we go. And most of all the other characters should have similar sprites, so you can follow along pretty easily. Now the next thing to make sure before you start selecting sprites is right over here on the right. It's going to have size, which is for me 16 by 16. Make sure yours is set to 16 by 16 or it's going to be scaled wrong, all right? So go ahead, 16 by 16, enter on each side, perfect. Then we can zoom in a little bit and start choosing our animations. So this one again is the idle front. So let's choose the idle front, which is going to be up here, top left. Add frames, perfect. Now, as you can see though, it's currently invisible. The reason it's doing this, if you go to hurt to color, why it's doing this is because we are setting things not correctly, such as the clip children. This is disabled. What we're going to do is we're going to do clip and draw. And then for the modulate, we're actually going to go back on this, all right, which should give you that box around it. We might need to go ahead and just do clip only, which should do that. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so make sure modulate is switched back to what it was, and then also that the clip children is clip only. All right, perfect. Then to make this thing a little more clear, go back to your animated sprite 2D, go to texture, change that filter from inherit to nearest to get a little better view. All right, awesome. Perfect. So now that we have idle front, let's continue. Let me double check one thing real quick before I forget. Yep, we're looking good. We have clip only selected. Yes, we do. Awesome. All right, so we have the idle front. Now we're gonna need a couple more idles, okay? So let's go ahead and add a new one. Let's go ahead and do another idle. Let's do idle left. Enter, perfect. Let's add that sprite. Select your sprite sheet. Make sure, again, that size is 16 by 16. Go ahead, zoom in a little bit. Let's find that idle left. Should be this one right here. Let's add that, perfect. And there we go, nice. Let's continue. So we have idle front, idle left. Let's go ahead and do idle right. Idle right, perfect. Let's add the sprite for that. Zoom in a little bit. Idle right should be all the way there. Perfect. Awesome. All right, let's do the last idle. Let's go ahead. Let's do idle back. Perfect. Let's go ahead, add that one there. Idle back, I think is going to be this one right here. Add that in there. Perfect. So now we have idle front, idle left, idle right, and idle back. Perfect. Let's do the rest of the animations now. Now we can go ahead and do the walking animations. So let's add those in real quick. Let's go ahead and let's do walk front. Perfect. Let's add the animations for that. Select the sprite sheet. Zoom in a little bit. So for idle front, that's going to be the ones here on the left. And again, we do not want to start with this one on the top. And the reason is because it's not going to look very natural when we start walking. So it's better to start with the second one right here. Do the next one, and the next one, and then the back to the top. So we're going to start at 0, 1, 2, and then back at the top at 3, okay? And you'll see why once we add these. So there's the start of it. If you hit play right here, you can see the actual animation. Perfect. Another thing to make sure that this looping is set. Reason being is because, of course, we want this animation to play over and over again once you're walking. All right, perfect. So that's for the walk front. Let's do the rest of them now. Let's go ahead. Let's do walk left. Perfect. Select that. Let's add in the animation sprites. There we go. Zoom in a little bit. Walk left. All right, that's going to be these ones here. And again, start with the second one down and then go all the way back up. Perfect. Hit play to test it out. Looks good. One more cool thing you can do if you don't like the speed of this animation, you can change it right here with this 5 FPS. So if you want it to be faster, you can make it go down, or if you want it to be slower, you can make that number go up. I'm just going to keep everything at 5 for now. I might change it later, but I think this looks pretty good. All right, let's add another one. Let's go ahead. Let's do walk right now. There we go. Let's add in the animations. Zoom in a little bit. Let's add the walk right movement. Perfect. Hit play to test it out. Looks pretty good. I like it. Nice. Let's go ahead. Let's do the last one for walking. So we're going to do walk back. Let's select those animations. Zoom in. Remember, start with the second one down. Perfect. Let's hit play. There we go. Nice. Looks pretty good. All right. So now we have all the idles. We have the walking. Now we need the tool using. All right. So let's go ahead and let's create a new one for this. Let's call this tool front. Awesome, select that there. Let's go ahead into the sprite sheet, zoom in a little bit. Now for the using tools, we are just going to use all the ones here on this row here, where he is sticking out his arm like he's using a tool. We aren't going to have individual sprites for individual tools, but we will have another object that will be visible, and you'll see that in just a bit. So let's go ahead and use the tool front, which should be this one right here. Let's go ahead, add frame, just like that, nice. Now the one thing to make sure with these ones is we don't want to loop these. So that you see this little loop button right here, go ahead and turn that off for now, all right? Because we only want this to happen one time when the button's clicked. We don't want it to basically continually do it. And we will change that a little bit in the code, but you'll see how that happens once we get into the scripting, all right? So let's do a tool animation for each side. We have tool front, let's go ahead, let's do another one. Let's do tool left. Let's add that animation for that. Zoom in. Tool left should be this one here. Let's add that, perfect. Turn off that loop. Let's add another one. Let's do tool right. There we go. Select that there. Add sprite. Tool right, let's go ahead, select the right one. Perfect. Turn off the loop. Make sure we turned off the loop for the other ones as well, which we did. Nice. Let's do the last one. Tool back. There we go. Nice. Let's go ahead, add the sprite for that. Tool back should be the second one, I think, which is right here. Perfect. Add that in. Nice. There we go. So now we have all of our idle ones, we have our tool ones, and then the walk ones. And just don't forget to turn off the loops for all the tool ones, all right? There we go. Nice. Next thing we need is the actual animation for when the player gets hurt. So for testing purposes, let's leave this on idle front, which is right here. Just select that there. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this in a separate animation player. So we're going to right click, add child node on our animated sprite 2D. And now we are going to select the animation player 2D. All right. And the reason we're doing this is just to kind of separate things. I don't necessarily want to stop any of the animated sprite 2D animations. So we're going to have this as a separate one. And the way you do this is pretty cool, I think. It can also work with other types of players or even other types of enemies, units, all that stuff. So let's select the animation player here. Let's add an animation, new, and we're going to call this idle. This one's going to be anytime the player is not getting hurt. And all we're going to do for this one is make sure you're selecting that, go to the hurt color, and we're just going to save the modulate. So select the modulate key, create key, just like that. Awesome. Then we're going to create another one. This one is going to be called hurting. Perfect. And for this one, though, we are going to change the modulate. So we're going to go ahead, make this red. And as you can see, it's going to make the player red, so it's like he's getting hurt. Save the key value, create, go back to the 0.5, and we're going to change the modulate back to what it was. Key value save, and then again back to red at the end of that, all right? And back to red, which was like something like that, perfect. You can adjust that however you like. I think this looks pretty good, all right? So if we hit play, it's going to flash red. If you want to loop it, that might look even better. So what we'll do is we'll flash red. And again, we'll have a timer on the player, which will be like if this flashing red goes on for 2 seconds, then we'll turn it off. But again, you'll see that in the code once we get into the scripting, all right? But this is a nice way to do this because this animation will keep playing no matter what animation the player is in, all right? Perfect. Let's go back and turn this to the idle one for resting, just like that. And there we go. That's going to be everything for the body. So let's save what we got, Control S. Save it into our characters folder that we made earlier. Again, this is going to be the yellow one right here. Save that. Perfect. All right, looking good so far. All right, let's go ahead now and create the tools for the player. So we don't get confused, let's go ahead and close the body right here. Let's go ahead and add another node 2D. So we're going to add another node 2D. This time we are going to call it tools, all right? Perfect. And also what we want to do is we want to put this above the body. It's just going to help with scaling things and also making sure the sprites are behind what's in front of it, all right? Awesome. So the tools is going to be turned on and off depending on what tool we're using, of course. So we're going to right click, add child node. We're going to add a sprite 2D, all right? And the first sprite 2D is going to be the axe. It's going to be our first tool we can use as the player. All right. So where is that axe located? Well, that's going to be inside of our art. Drop down the Ninja Adventure Pack. Go ahead and go to items. And you should see weapons somewhere right here. Perfect. And there is the axe. Now make sure you are using the axe tool. You can use the axe if you want, but I think it looks a lot better if we just use the axe tool. And then what we want to use is we want to use the sprite in hand, all right? We will use the actual sprite.png to represent it in the UI, but because we are going to be using the axe, we want to use the sprite in hand. So go ahead and take that and just drag and drop it on the axe. All right, perfect. Awesome. And the axe, if you move it down a little bit, you'll see it. It's going to be this here. What you want to make sure, though, is make sure it's clear. So again, select it. Go to the texture. Change that filter to nearest, all right? And so we can see things a little better. You can close the animation. We don't need that open. Awesome, so that's gonna be the actual axe. All right, but as you can tell, it's not gonna be in the correct position here. So let's zero it out for now. We will change the actual X and Y position based on which direction the player is when you're using the AWSD keys. So when we're moving the player, and of course they're facing either left, right, up, or down, and then when we use the axe, it will go ahead and change the position of the axe to face whichever direction we're facing. But that's going to be all inside the code, which you will see in a bit, all right? But let's go ahead and get the rest of the sprites in here. So we have the axe. We're also going to need a couple other tools. So I'm going to duplicate the axe. This one here is going to be the pickaxe. So I'm going to do pickaxe. And if you guessed it, go ahead and just locate where the pickaxe is. Should be somewhat further down. Unless I missed it, here it is. Make sure you're using the in sprite hand pickaxe. Take that pickaxe, drag and drop it into there, perfect. You can also see a sample image of it over here in the texture, just to make sure you put the right one in, perfect. Awesome. All right, let's continue. So we have the pickaxe. Let's go ahead, duplicate that. This one here, we're gonna use the till. This is gonna help basically mine the dirt so we can plant seeds. So we have the till here. For the till, there isn't necessarily an actual till tool, but something that looks just like a till is going to be the fork, all right? So go ahead and find the fork. Make sure you use the sprite in hand for it. Drag and drop it in. Sample images right here, perfect. So we have the axe, the pickaxe, the till. We're also gonna go ahead and we're gonna have some water. So like when we're watering plants. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this water. The water is not going to actually be inside of this. The water is going to be in, I think it's going to be in potions. So if you scroll up and go to potion, you should see a water pot.png. So take that, drag and drop it into here. Awesome. If it's a little too big, you can always adjust the size, but I think it'll look pretty good. I'm just going to move it down. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to Control Z. And remember, whenever we're facing whichever direction when we're moving and we actually use a tool, it will go ahead and rotate that in the direction that we want with the code, all right? And that'll all be done in the code. So we won't have to worry about it right now here, okay? Awesome. So we have water. Let's go ahead, do the next one. This one is gonna be, let's do the fish pull. This one's gonna be a little different. So we're gonna do fish pull. All right. For the fish pull, we don't necessarily have a fish pull that we can use in hand. There is a UI symbol that we will use. If you scroll down, should see fishing pole or fishing rod. This is going to be just the sprite 2D, but this doesn't really work for a in-game character. This is going to be good for UI. So what I found best to use is actually go ahead and find, I think it's going to be the stick, which is right here, which is just going to be a long stick. So let's take that stick sprite in hand, take that for the fish pole. If you move it down though, it's going to have a little bit of some white on it, and we don't necessarily want that. So I think a cool way we can fix it is just simply right click, add child node on fish pole, use a color rect. And what we're going to do is we're simply just going to have this color out the inside part. So if we go all the way up here, and we go up towards the top part, which is right here, and zoom in a little bit, we can go ahead and just match the color with the actual wood color on it, which does end up looking like we're using a fishing pole. So select color, use this little tool here, and then simply highlight over that, and there we go, perfect. So that looks like we will be holding an actual fishing pole, okay? Awesome. So we're gonna use that there. We're gonna go ahead and just zero out the actual location though, so everything works good when we're using it, so keep it there for now, perfect. Awesome, I'm gonna close that up. All right, so the next one we're gonna do is gonna be the sword. So I'm gonna take water and duplicate it. I don't wanna duplicate the fishbowl because we had that color rect on it. So let's go ahead and change the name of this one. Let's call this sword. Perfect. So we have a sword there. Let's close the stick, and I'm also gonna close the potion one. I think we already did actually, yeah we did. Let's find the sword. I think it's gonna be sword 2. You can use whichever sword you want, but I like sword 2 the best. I'm gonna take the sprite in hand from sword 2, drag and drop it, perfect. There's the sample image, looks good, nice. All right, so we have axe, pickaxe, till, water, sword, and fishbowl, perfect. So that's gonna be every tool we have. All right, perfect. Now one more thing we need to add inside of tools is going to be an area 2D. That's kind of going to be like the actual hitting of the tool. Let's add a child node for that. Area 2D. All right, this area 2D, we can leave it as area 2D, but we do have to give it a collision shape. Let's right click, collision shape. Let's just give it a small circle to represent the hit point. So this is clearly too big for the actual point of whatever tool we're using. So I'm simply going to shrink it just like that. If you want to see it better, remember you can always just move it up if you want to. I still think that's a little big. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Let's do something like that. And also let's change the debug color to something a little more red. All right, perfect. So this is going to be the actual like hitbox of the tool we're using, okay? So again, just like the actual tools and the sprites, this is going to move with it using the script, all right? And you'll see that with the script, okay? But let's move this back and center it up. Make sure it's always centered, just like that, perfect. Now, one thing we need to set though is on the actual collision shape 2D, we need to disable it because we don't want to be using this, of course, unless we're using the tool. So we're just going to set that to disabled for now, all right? Perfect, awesome. So I think that should be it for everything we need here. And again, just to kind of future tell what's going on, how do we know exactly which tool we're using? How does this hitbox know? Well, what we're going to be doing in the script also, on this area 2D, you can kind of see if you go to nodes and groups, we're going to be adding multiple types of groups to this. So basically, when we're using and have an active axe, we're going to have that axe group attached to this area 2D. And if we switch it to pickaxe, it'll do the same thing, all right? So it's always going to be changing the group depending on which tool we have active, all right? And for now, at the start of the game, we're not going to have any tool active. So you can go ahead and select everything and just turn them all invisible for now, okay? You can leave the area 2D visible though, but everything else is going to be invisible unless we have it selected in our current inventory. All right, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and close this up. Let's save what we got, and looking good so far. All right, let's wrap up this player. So we have a couple more things to add, which is going to be a couple hitboxes for the player, and then also some timers, okay? So as you can see, we still have a warning here. It's basically asking for a collision shape for the player, so we can go ahead and add that real quick. So let's go ahead and add a collision shape 2D. Let's go ahead and give it an actual shape. Make sure you're selecting the inspector for it. I'm going to do a circle for this, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So let's go ahead, shrink that a bit. Let's do something like that size, perfect. So that's going to be the main collision shape. So basically when we're running into things, this is going to prevent us from, of course, walking through walls and other collision shapes that we run into. All right, awesome. We're also going to need another area 2D. This is going to be our hitbox, okay? So I know we have hitboxes already for the tools, but this one's going to represent whether or not the player can get hurt by an enemy that bumps into you, all right? So I'm going to change the name of this. We're going to call this just hitbox, okay? Perfect. And what we need, of course, is a collision shape. So let's go ahead, let's add something. Let's add a collision shape 2D. And let's just make it exactly the same as our current one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a circle shape. And just to make it a little bit more easier to understand, we're going to make it just a little bit bigger. Okay, so it's going to be kind of like this size instead. And what let's change the color. Let's make it red, just so we can kind of see the separation of that one and this one. Now, naturally, you might want to make them equal the same, but I just think it works a little better for testing like this for now. We might change it later, but I like it. Let's keep it. All right, so we have our hitbox, we have our collision shape. Now we just need to add a couple timers, and these timers are going to be very important for the code because we're going to want certain things to take a little bit of time in between repeating. So let's go ahead, add child node. We're going to add our first timer. This one is going to be our tool timer. Now this tool timer is basically going to help us have a little bit of a wait time in between using tools. And you'll see that in action once we finish the script. I don't just want to be able to hold down a tool continuously. I want there to be kind of a little bit of a delay in between that use of the tool. All right. So we're just going to set a couple things for this timer. Let me double check what I did for mine. Go ahead, let's select timer tool. What we're going to do is make this very short. I'm just going to do like a 0.2 seconds. All right. And this is going to be a one shot. And eventually we will add a signal to it. All right. So make sure you have 0.2 seconds for this and also a one shot. The other timer we're going to have, let's add that real quick. This one here is going to be the hurting timer. So basically, if we run into an enemy and we start to get hurt, then we are going to have a little bit of wait time so we don't just continuously get hurt until we run out of hearts. All right. So I want a little bit of a wait time in between how many times we can get hurt. Okay. So this is going to be pretty similar to the tool one. It's going to be a little bit longer though, so select timer hurting. This one I'm going to make 2 seconds, okay? So basically you're going to be in the hurting phase for 2 seconds before it turns off. And again, this is going to be a one shot as well. All right, perfect. So go ahead and save that. And there we go, looking good. All right, in this section, we're going to go ahead and create the bobber sprite. We're going to start off creating a new node for the player's bobber. Then we're going to go ahead and add all the sprites and particle animations for the bobber. Last but not least, we're also going to add a timer for the fishing action. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started creating the bobber. So this is going to be inside of our fishing pole. So we're going to have to reopen up our tools. Go ahead and select our fishing pole, open that up. Now to make this a little easier, let's go ahead and make everything visible, such as the fishing pole. Perfect. So our bobber is just going to be a little bit below it, so we can get the scaling right and everything. I'm going to go ahead and just move this down a little bit. Just for testing purposes, we will move it back once we're done. So now we need to go ahead and make the actual bobber. All right, so this is going to be inside the fish pole. So right click, add child node, and we're going to go ahead and add a node 2D. All right. Let's rename this. Let's call this bobber. Perfect. All right. So a couple things we're going to add to the bobber. Eventually we'll add a script to it, but for now let's go ahead and add all the sprites to it. So the first sprite is going to be a sprite 2D. So let's go ahead, sprite 2D. This is going to be the actual bobber itself, so the little ball that goes up and down in the water. So let's go ahead and find what we want to use for this. I think there's a pretty good one inside of our Art Ninja Adventure Pack. And then go to items, and it's actually going to be inside the food. Now there's a little red ball that I think would look pretty good. It's going to be this little red seed here. I know this isn't exactly a bobber, but I think it looks pretty good for what we're working with. So let's go ahead and take that seed3.png, drag and drop it into there. Perfect. And that kind of looks like a bobber to me. It might be a little darker red than I would want it to be, but I think it'll work for what we're doing. All right. So like I said before though, the bobber itself is going to be a little bit below. So let's go ahead and take that main bobber there and just go a little bit below. So when we're using the fishing pole, this is going to be somewhere kind of about here. And we might adjust it later, but I think this will work. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and shrink this a little bit. I think it's a little too big. So let's select that sprite 2D, transform. Let's shrink it just a little bit. Let's do like 0.8 for the X and Y. There we go. Awesome. All right, the next thing we're going to need to do, and this is going to be added onto the Sprite 2D, is we are going to need to add a GPU particle 2D. And this is basically going to give it a little particle effect that we want to happen when there's actually a fish on the line. So let's go ahead and add that. Right click. Again, this is going to be GPU particles 2D. All right, add that in there, perfect. So now we're going to need to add a couple things to it to make sure the settings are okay. So let's go ahead. What we're going to do for process material, make sure you're selecting that GPU. We're going to do a new, I think we're going to do a new particle process material. Yes, we are. There we go, perfect. Now we're going to have to do a couple things here. Go ahead and select that. Now let's see what we're going to change here. We have amount. Let's do 10 for the amount. All right. And then we can leave the amount ratio the same. Emitting on. Lifetime limit 0. Let's go ahead and make our way down to the radial velocity, which should be in here somewhere, wherever that is. That's going to be inside the animated velocity. There we go. Radial velocity. Perfect. Let me double check and make sure we are doing the right one. All right, so we are going to do a minimum of 100. There we go. That's going to make sure it goes all around. And then a maximum of 120. All right, perfect. So that's going to be circular. There we go. It's going to go all the way around, which I like it. Then we're also going to go ahead to gravity, which should be, I think, that's going to be inside accelerations. Find the gravity tab, which is right here. Awesome. And what we're going to do for gravity, we're simply going to change everything to 0. So change that Y value to 0. There you go. See, now it's going to be like this. It's not going to be kind of dipping at all. It's going to simply go anywhere across it. But we're simply emitting it too far and too little amount. So we're going to adjust that. We're going to go to, I think it's going to be in a resource. Yep. And let me double check, make sure we got this okay. Path, we can keep the same for now. Let me see what we need to change. Time, so we need to go into time. And what we're going to do, we don't want the lifetime to be 1 second. That's way too much. We're going to do a 0.04. Perfect. See how that's like kind of making the splashing ripple effect? That's what we want. All right, awesome. And let's see, everything else we can leave the same. We might change the color though, and that's simply what we've always done with changing colors. We're going to go to visibility, and we're going to go to modulate, and we're simply going to make it like a dark blue. Just like that. Perfect. And that's exactly what I want. That's making this nice little rippling effect in the pixels. Perfect. So this is going to be active when we have a fish on the line. Now, how do we tell it to do that? Well, we're going to have to give it an animation player. So let's go ahead and we're going to add that. We can add that also in the Sprite 2D. So right click on Sprite 2D, add child node. This is going to be a animation player. Perfect. And we're going to have two. We're going to have, I think we're going to have just idle and then fish on the line. So let's add that. Let's do the idle one first. Idle is when we do not have a fish on the line. So let's go ahead and give it a nice effect for that. The first thing we know is we know that the actual particle system is not going to be active. So when it's at 0 right here, we are going to go ahead. We are going to key value this. But make sure we turn off it and key value it again. Perfect. So that rippling effect is not going to be active. But what I think would look kind of cool is if we give this bobber a little like floating kind of animation where it gets bigger and smaller. So let's go ahead. Let's save the actual size of this. Let's go to size. Or the scale. Let's save the scale. We're going to save it at 0.8. And then we're going to shrink it a little bit more when we go to 0.5. So let's go ahead. Let's do a 6 for this. There we go. And then when we're back at 1, we're going to go back to 0.8. All right, perfect. Key value that. And there we go. So if we hit play, there you go. Make sure you have looping here so it loops it. So if you hit play, there we go. Perfect. Now we're also going to need the animation for fish on the line. So let's go ahead, add a new animation for that. Fish underscore on underscore. Or we can just do fish on the line to keep it short. Perfect. All right, when fish is on the line though, if you remember, what we're going to do, we are going to go ahead and we are going to select our sprite 2D. So go ahead and select sprite 2D, go to visibility. Now, if we did modulate, it would make everything inside of it invisible, but we just want to make it self-invisible, so select the modulate right here. And what we're going to do is first we're going to save, or you know what, we might actually have to save this value also on the other one, or it's going to not like that, so go back to idle real quick. For self-modulate, key value that before we change it so it knows it needs to pop up. Go back to the fish on the line, and now that we're here, now we can go ahead, save that value again. But instead of making it completely visible, we're going to go ahead and make it completely invisible. All right, perfect. Save that value. Awesome. Keep it on repeat. And then, of course, what we need to do is we need to make the GPU particles 2D visible. So select that. Go ahead, key value that. But make sure you key value it with it on, okay, just like that. Hit play, and there you go. Awesome. So now we have two animations. Let's test them both again. Let's go back to idle. Hit idle, there we go. That one's floating like that. Let's go to fish online. There we go, and back again. Perfect. Awesome, looks really good. Now we just need one more thing here. We need a timer, okay? So let's go ahead, and this can be just in the bobber itself. Let's do timer. Add that timer there. Perfect. Let me double check what we need for this timer. We're gonna make it a little bit longer than our other timers. Instead of 1 second, we're gonna do 3 seconds. And then this is going to be auto start, just because it's always going to start at the beginning of the game. All right, awesome. And eventually we will attach a signal to it, but that should be everything we need for the bobber itself. Okay, awesome. What we can do though currently is we can simply turn off the bobber though. We don't need this on, so I'm going to go ahead and make it invisible. And then don't forget we moved the fishing pole, so we got to move it back to 0x and 0y. Let's do that real quick. Perfect. And then also we can make the fishing pole invisible for now. Awesome. And the same thing with all the tools as well. Perfect. All right, looking good. I'm gonna close that animation player. Save what you got, and there you go. All right, before we continue creating the player script, we need to create a couple global scripts. The first global script we're gonna create is the global inventory. We're going to start off creating a new script to track the player's global inventory. Then we're going to go ahead and add some default values for the inventory. Then we're going to go ahead and create a function to move items in the inventory. Let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started creating this global script. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead, select project, project settings. We're going to go to globals here on the top. Let's go ahead and create a new name for this. We're going to call this, let's just call this global underscore inventory. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and add that in there. Keep the name, hit create, perfect. All right, to open this up, simply go ahead, select the little folder button here, and there we go. Awesome. All right, so we're gonna need a couple things in here. First thing we're gonna do, let's get rid of everything we have currently, except for the extends node. All right, we need some default values here. So let's create a variable. We're gonna call this current underscore player underscore inventory. And we're gonna equal this to an array with multiple arrays inside of it, all right? So the first array value we're going to have is the name of the actual thing, which is going to be our axe, all right? Then outside the quotes, still inside that array, we're going to have the type of thing it is, which is a tool, all right? Then we're going to go ahead and we are going to say whether it is selected or unselected. Always at the beginning, we are going to label them as unselected, all right? Awesome. And then the last value is going to be how many of these. And we're only ever going to have one axe, so we'll keep it at 1. All right. So we need to do this for every tool we have, okay? So let's go ahead. Let's just copy this whole value here. Don't forget a comma in between once you paste it right there like that. Perfect. Let's do the next value. So this is going to be pickaxe. All right. So pickaxe. And I still have that value covered. So let's go ahead. We're going to do a comma after this one. Paste that in. So we have our axe, our pickaxe. We can go ahead and just view all our tools here. We need the till. Let's go ahead, do a till here. Awesome. Go ahead, find the end of it. Don't forget your comma. Paste. So we have till. Let's do the water. Let's do water. Perfect. Go to the end of it. Do a comma. Paste. So we have water. We're going to need sword. Let's do sword. And then the last one is going to be the fish pole. All right. So comma, paste again, and change that axe to fish pole. All right, perfect. Awesome. So that's going to be our default values, okay? So let's go ahead. We have current player inventory. Awesome. I'm going to copy this whole line now. All right, and there's a reason why we're doing this. Let's copy this whole line. All right. And we're going to hit an enter over here. All right. And then we're simply going to paste that entire value on another one. And you know what? Even before we do that, just to make things a little more simpler, we're going to fill up the entire one. All right. So I know we have, I think we have a couple. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But our entire inventory is actually going to be 3 rows of 6. Okay. So we're going to need some null values to finish this off. So we should have a couple more. So we are actually going to need some nulls here. So go ahead, do a comma, and do a null. All right. So we're going to need 2 more rows of 6 for this. Okay. So we have 1 there. We're going to go ahead. And we're going to do another null. So that's 2. That's 3. That's 4. That's 5. And that's 6. Okay, awesome. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So go ahead, go to the end of that, do a comma. And what we're simply going to do is we're just going to paste that 6 amount of nulls. I'm going to fix that little spot there so it looks a little better. Oops. So copy all that and just simply paste that in. So we should have now 2 rows of nulls on top of our actual selected tools as well. All right, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to get rid of a couple of these spaces here so it'll look a little nicer. Let's get rid of that there, and then the last one over here. Perfect. Awesome. So that's going to be our entire starting inventory. All right. I know we labeled that as current, but we're also going to need our default one, which is going to be basically the same thing. Except, of course, we're going to do player default inventory. So that's our current player inventory. This one's going to be our default. All right. Really doesn't matter which one is which, as long as you have both of them and they're exactly the same. All right. So we're going to do player default. All right. Awesome. And the reason why we need that default is, of course, if we ever reset the game, we're going to have to reset our inventory. All right. The current one we're just going to use as an example, because eventually once we start saving the data, we're going to have the actual current one. So this one's going to get updated over time. Okay. Awesome. All right. Next 2 variables we're going to have is going to be one called move underscore selected underscore player underscore spot underscore 1. All right. And we are going to equal this to null until, of course, it is selected. All right. And you'll see that in the function. All this is going to do is help us handle when we want to move things around. All right. And this one is going to be move selected player spot 2. All right. Also equal null. Now, why do we have these? Well, once we have our inventory selected, we are going to want to move, of course, our inventory items. So such as the axe. If I want to switch places with the axe and the pickaxe, maybe I want the pickaxe in front, maybe I want the axe in the spot that the pickaxe was. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it with a simple function. All right. And that function is going to be function, and we're going to call it move underscore player underscore inventory underscore items. All right. That's going to be our function. Let's go ahead, give it an empty set of parentheses, and then give it a arrow to void : All right. Awesome. Now, how we're actually going to move this is we're going to go ahead, we're going to create a fresh new variable, call this new underscore value underscore 1, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to equal this to our current player inventory. And then inside an array, we're going to set our move selected player spot 1. So this one here, go ahead and grab that, paste it in. We're going to go ahead and move it just like that. All right. And then if you guessed it, we're going to have a similar one right below it. We're going to have another variable, new underscore value underscore 2. All right. And we are going to equal that to, again, our current player inventory. But this time, we're going to go ahead and put our move selected player spot 2 in there. So I'm going to copy that value up there, paste it in, just like that. All right, awesome. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to set our current player inventory, our array of move selected player spot 1. Not sure why it's not automatically populating, but we'll do that. And we are going to go ahead and we are going to equal that to our new value 2. All right, so new value 2, awesome. And then we're going to do just the opposite with the other one. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to do our current player inventory, give it parentheses set, and this time we are going to have our spot 2. So move selected player spot 2. And if you guessed it, we're going to go ahead, we're going to equal this one this time to the new spot, or the new value 1. All right, so pretty much the opposite. We're basically replacing each one with the one that is selected. All right, awesome. And then what we're going to do, so this thing refreshes, we are going to reset our spots to null. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to take these values we have right here, paste them in, remove the variable because it's already defined, just like that. Perfect. All right, awesome. And that should be it. So eventually we are going to call this function whenever we want to remove, or not remove, whenever we want to move a certain selected 2 spots. So again, if I want to move my axe to my pickaxe spot, and my pickaxe spot to my axe, then we're going to call this function so it can initiate that movement. All right, awesome. All right, let's save what we got. And looking good so far. All right, in this section, we are going to create our global time script. Now, this script is very important for a lot of our other local scripts to work correctly, such as the plants growing and also some of the animals when they produce milk and eggs. Now, we're going to start this off creating that global script itself. Then we're going to go ahead and add all the variables we need to calculate things correctly. Last but not least, we're going to add a couple functions to continuously set and update the time. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started creating our global time script. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to select project settings. We're going to go to globals. We're going to add a new script here. We're going to call this global underscore time. Okay, go ahead, add that in, keep the name, hit create. Perfect. Let's open it up, and there we go. Awesome. All right, so let's start from scratch here. All you want to leave is the extends node. All right, so we're going to add a couple things in here, starting off with a couple variables. We're going to start off with a constant variable, and this is going to be called minutes underscore per underscore day. All right, this is going to be a type of int, and we are going to make that equal 24 times 60. All right, perfect. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to create another constant. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do minutes underscore per underscore hour. Go ahead, make that a type int, and we're going to equal that to 60. Awesome. All right, next one, we're going to do another constant. And we're going to call this game underscore minutes. Oopsie. Or just minute, I guess. Could do minutes, it really doesn't matter. Game minutes underscore duration. And that is going to be a type of float equaling TAU / minutes per day. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Make sure we have these correctly. Let's keep it going. Then we're also going to have another variable. We're going to call this game_speed. This is going to be a type of float. And we are currently going to set that to 5.0. And we might change it, but for now, let's leave it the same. All right, then we're going to go ahead. We're going to create another variable, call it initial day. _day. And this is going to be a type of int. And we're going to equal that to 0. All right, awesome. Then we're going to go ahead. We're going to do initial hour. Initial hour. Give it a type int. And we're going to equal that to 12. We're going to go ahead, do another one. We're going to do initial minute now. Again, type int and equal that to 3. All right, awesome. Perfect. Then below those, we're going to go ahead. We're going to do another variable. We're going to call this time. It's going to be a type float. We're going to equal that to 0.0. Below that, we're going to create another variable. We're going to call this current minute. This is also going to be a type int. And we're going to make this minus equals 1. All right, perfect. Then we're going to go ahead. We're going to create another variable. We're going to call this current day. And again, this is going to be type. I think we're going to make this a type int. Equal that to 0. All right, perfect. Looks like it doesn't like our current minute. Int minus equal. Oh, no, that's why. Whoopsie. We want to do equals -1. Perfect. Awesome. Make sure you got that there. Looking good. All right. Let's keep going. Almost done with all our variables. All right. Then we're also going to have a signal. And this signal I'm going to call game_time. Give it a set of parentheses. Time of type float. Just like that. We're going to do another signal. We're going to call this time_tick. And we're going to give this a value of day, int, comma, hour, int, comma, minute, type int. All right, perfect. One more signal. We're going to do a signal, and we're going to call this time_tick_day. All right. And inside of parentheses, we're going to do day, int. All right, perfect. Awesome. And last variable, we are going to go ahead. This is going to be called days_past. And we are currently going to set that to 0 because that's what we're going to set it before we bring in those values that we save. All right, awesome. I know that was a lot of variables. Make sure you have that, and we should be looking good. Save what you got so far. All right, now that we got all of our variables, let's go ahead and add some functions. So now that we have every value, we can actually calculate these to get our in-game time. All right, so we're going to start off with our ready function. So let's go ahead, do function_ready. And if you remember, this function is going to basically happen anytime the game is first started. All right. So we're going to have a couple things happen. The first thing we're going to happen is we are going to wait till our data loads in. Now we don't have this script or function created yet. That's going to be in the next section. But all it's going to do is basically pull in all the saved data. And you'll see that in action in the next section. But this is going to be coming in from our script called global stats. All right. Which is going to be kind of like all of our player stats. And I'm going to call that function recover. Give it an empty set of parentheses. This is going to stay in the error though because it does not exist yet, but it will exist in the next section. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set initial day We are going to equal that to initial day plus days passed. Now, our days passed is actually going to be set inside that global stats. That's why we are awaiting it, because we don't really know the initial day or how many days have passed until this happens. That's why we have this await here, because we need that value so we can calculate things correctly. All right, there we go. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to call another function called set underscore initial underscore time. All right, and we are going to create that in just a second. That's going to set, of course, the initial time of the game, and we're going to be running that over and over again. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, we are going to go ahead and create our next function. This is going to be our function underscore process. So this is going to be something that continuously happens. So it's going to happen continuously after the ready function. We are going to actually change it up a little bit. We're going to change it up by delta colon float, because we're going to pass in, and then we are also going to make it a arrow to void as well. All right, just like that. Perfect. You can format things how you want, really, but I like to keep it as it is and how it was working before. All right, awesome. So in this thing, we're going to go ahead, we're going to set our time plus equals delta times our game speed that we have set times our game minutes duration. All right, so if we ended up wanting the game to basically run a little faster, we could totally change that game speed. All right, perfect. Below that, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to add a couple enters so we can see a little better. Below that time, we're going to go ahead and we are going to set our game time dot emit. All right, which we are going to pass in that new time that we calculated. All right, because if you go back up here, you're going to remember that emit for game time, we are passing in a float to that. All right, which is going to be the time that we just calculated right above. All right, then we're going to need another function that we're going to create next, which is going to be called recalculate time, which, if you guessed it, is going to simply recalculate our time. All right, awesome. So now that we have all that, let's go ahead and create our next function that we need, which is our set initial time. So we can go ahead and create that now. Go ahead, do function. I'm just going to copy it in, make sure I don't spell it wrong. There we go, set initial time. And this is going to be also an arrow to void. Just like that, perfect. All right, so in here we're going to set our initial time. To do that, we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call this initial underscore total underscore minutes. All right, and we're going to make that equal to our initial day times our minutes per day plus our parentheses of initial hour plus, or actually I think this is a times, yep, times our minutes per hour. All right, perfect. And then let me double check. Then we're going to add the whole thing plus our initial minutes again. There we go. All right, perfect. Awesome. So we got that there. All right, back over here. We're also going to go ahead. We are going to make our time now equal to our initial total minutes that we just calculated above times our game's minutes duration. All right. Then again, we're going to have to do another await for what is above. All right, because we are waiting so we can reset things. All right, because remember, we can't really get our data until it comes back. That's why we need all these awaits. All right, awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and do our last function. This is going to be our recalculate time. All right, so I'm going to copy that, and this is what's going to be happening over and over again. So let's do function recalculate time, give it an empty set of parentheses, an arrow to void, and then a colon. All right, awesome. So this is going to be the actual effect that's recalculating the time over and over again. So let's scroll down a little bit. we're going to do a variable in here. We're going to call this total underscore minutes. And we are going to go ahead and get our total minutes by making this an int and equaling it to int parenthesis set time divided by game minutes duration. Below that, we're going to create another variable. This is going to be a variable called day, and it's also going to be an int, and we're going to equal this to int parenthesis set. Inside of there, we're going to do total minutes divided by minutes per day. Make sure it's capitalized. Minutes per day. Awesome. Next variable, we're going to go ahead. Now we're going to calculate our current underscore day underscore minutes. All right. And we're going to go ahead, make this an int. And just like we did with the others, we will go ahead and equal that to total minutes, percentage symbol, minutes per day. All right, perfect. Awesome. Next up, create another variable. We're going to call this hour, and it's going to be a type int. We're going to equal that to int parenthesis set current day minutes divided by minutes per hour. All right, just like that, perfect. Right below it, we're going to create another variable. We're going to call this minute. Give it a type of int, equaling it to int. And we're going to do current day minutes, percentage symbol, to the minutes per hour. All right, awesome. Perfect. So that's how we're going to get our values from all of our current variables. Now we need to make sure we show it by doing a couple if statements here. So we're going to say if our hour equals 23, we're going to go ahead and we are going to set our global stats, which is again that script we are going to create in the future. We're going to go ahead to our global stats dot player underscore energy, because of course once the time strikes midnight we want our character to pass out, so we're going to set that to 0. We're also going to set our character's health to 0 as well, so the cutoff time is going to be that 24 o'clock basically, or 23, which is going to be like 11. All right, and we will recalculate showing it so it's not 23, but make sure we have this here. This is going to be like a safety net in case we get past our time limit. All right, so now we just need to convert it to modern time. So we'll do if current minute, and we're going to say current minute does not equal minute. And then we're going to go ahead to, we got minute does not equal to, and we're going to say current minute equals minute. And then we're also going to go ahead, we're going to say time tick dot emit. And we're going to go ahead and pass in our day, comma, hour, comma, minute. All right, perfect. Awesome. These are still going to be red, of course, until we get our global stats script created, but this should be looking good. Let's double check. Current minute does not equal minute. Current minute equals minute, and there we go, we're passing in. Okay, awesome. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to create one more if statement, which is going to be kind of like the opposite. So we're going to say if current day does not equal our day, then we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to pass in current day equals day, and then we're going to go ahead. Whoops, well it shouldn't be, it should just be day. There we go. Day. And then still inside the if statement, we are going to set time tick day dot emit, and then we are just going to pass in the day. All right, awesome. There we go, and I think we should be looking good here. Perfect. I'm going to get rid of these extra spaces to clean things up. Nice. All right, let me double check, make sure we got everything. We should be set, I think. Awesome. Perfect. And once we create the actual time UI, then we will see this in action working. And again, in the next section, we will create that global stats, so these arrows will go away. All right, awesome. All right, save what you got so far, and looking good. All right, in this section, we are going to create our global stats script. Now, this script is very important for saving the player's stats and other types of data. Now, we're going to start off creating this new script. Then we're going to go ahead and add all the variables that are going to represent the data. Then we're going to go ahead and create some functions to help load and save the player's data / stats. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. So let's go ahead and create our last global script that will also get rid of all these errors we have in this script. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Go up all the way to the left to project, project settings. Let's go to globals again. Let's go ahead and create a new one. And this one, let's see. I think we should call this, or I think we already have a name for it actually. If you look down here, we did global stats. So let's go ahead and do global _ stats with an S at the end. Awesome. Go ahead and add that. Global stats. Save that. Perfect. Let's open that up. Perfect. And then if we go ahead and go back to our one with issues, I think those errors should be gone. Yep, there's no more errors. Perfect. Let's go back to our global stats. Let's remove the functions below, keep the extends node. All right, let's go ahead and start this off with a couple variables. First variable, we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this player _ health. And we're going to make that equal to 10. Then we're going to go ahead and create another one. This is going to be called player _ energy. And we're going to go ahead, equal that to 35. We can always change this later, but I think for now it'll be okay. We're also going to create another variable. We're going to call this player _ in _ UI. And we're going to make that equal to false. Now this bool, of course, is just going to represent whether we are in a UI or not, because we don't want to do things like move the player around when they're in the UI. We kind of want to freeze the game. So that's what we're going to use that for. Then we're going to go ahead, create another variable. We're going to call this one player _ is _ fishing. All right, and that's going to be similar to our UI. It's going to freeze certain things and make other certain things active when we are fishing. We're also going to go ahead. We're going to create another variable. We're going to call this days _ money. And this is going to represent the current money we've made in that day. So that value is always going to reset, but it'll be added on to our main saved money once we're going to bed for the night. Then we're also going to do another variable. We're going to call this just player money. This is going to be the actual money we currently have. Perfect. Go that to 0 starting off. Awesome. Then we're also going to go ahead, create another variable. We're going to call this current _ buildings. This is going to be an array that represents the current buildings we have in the game. We're going to be able to unlock a barn, which can house cows, and also a chicken coop, which can house chickens. But in the start of the game, we're going to equal this to null. So just like this for now, all right? Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to create another variable. This one's going to be called current _ animals. And this is going to keep track of all the animals we have. And we're going to make that just equal an empty array for now. All right, perfect. Then we're going to add some more. We're going to create a variable representing the current plants _ in _ game. So current plants in the game. Basically, if we plant a plant, we want to make sure we keep track of it and also the growth level it's currently at. But that'll be an empty array starting off. Perfect. Then we're also going to create another variable. This one is going to be for the saving. We're going to call it config. And it's going to represent a new config file that we are going to create. So it'll be config file. Just like that. And we're going to do a .new because it's going to create a new one. Give it an empty set of parentheses. All right, awesome. Then we're also going to do another variable, and this is going to be called player _ using _ kitchen. And this is just going to be kind of like the other checks we have to verify whether or not we are using a specific UI. That's also going to be equal to false. Perfect. Awesome. So that's going to be all these starting variables we have here. There's going to be more that we are going to be connecting to. We're basically eventually going to grab certain variables from our other global scripts using this global script. But say we got so far, looking good. All right, let's continue. So let's start off creating a couple functions we're going to need. Let's go ahead and create a new function. Let's go ahead and create our process one first. This is going to be the one that continually updates over time. So the couple things we need to check in here. The first thing is going to be an if statement. And we're going to say if player energy is less than 35, or sorry, greater than 35, because sometimes if we eat food or other things that increase our energy, we want to make sure we don't go over that limit because that is our max limit. We go ahead and we set our player energy equal back to 35, all right? That's just going to ensure that we never go over that. Let's do the same thing for the health now. So another if statement, we're going to say if player health is greater than 10, then we're going to go ahead inside of there, we're going to set player health equal to 10, just like that. Perfect. Awesome. All right, next function we're going to create, it's going to be a simple ready function. So let's go ahead, do function underscore ready, and this is everything that's going to happen on start. First thing we're going to do is we have to reset some values such as days money. We're going to equal that to 0. We're also going to go ahead and do player money. We're going to set that equal to 0 as well. All right, just like that. Perfect. Then we're going to run a function we're going to create called recover. That's going to recover our specific data we have. We haven't created that yet, but we will in a bit. But we'll leave that for now. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead. I'm going to add a couple enters here so we can see it a little more centered. The next function we're going to go ahead and create, this is going to be a function called add underscore days underscore money. And this is going to be ran basically when we need to update our days money when we go to bed, which will start the next day. So we're going to go ahead and simply do a player money. Let's go ahead and find that. Player money plus equals days money. Okay, awesome. Perfect, and that's going to be it for that function. All right, now we're going to need another function. So let's keep going. The next one, this one here, is going to be a resetting one. So it's going to help reset our data. We're going to attach this to a specific button, and we'll call it restart button. Or sorry, restart stats, okay? That'll restart all the stats in the entirety of it. All right, and that's important for testing because we don't just want to keep going forever and have to continuously delete the file. We want to give the player the option to reset the stats in case they want to restart the game. All right, but this is pretty easy. All we're really going to do is we're just going to set all our values to the original ones. So first thing we'll do is we'll set our health and energy back to what they were. So player health will equal that to 10. Then we'll go ahead to player energy now. Equal that to what we set, which was 35. We'll also go ahead, we'll reset our player in UI. We'll equal that to false. We're also going to go ahead, we're going to do player is fishing, equal that to false also. Just like that, perfect. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to reset our time as well. So we're going to access that global time. And to reset the time, we'll do a dot days past plus equals 1. Perfect. And that's because we start on day 0. And we want to make sure we start on day 1. We're also going to await a function, which is our add days money. We want to make sure that calculates before we do this. We're also going to await our save function, which is going to save our data. Because of course we're resetting certain things such as the money and also the days. We need to make sure we save all that, okay? Another thing we're going to do is we're going to set our days money to equal 0. We're going to set our players money to equal 0. There it is. And I think we're going to go ahead and we're also going to do a get tree. This will actually reset the game. So underscore get tree, parentheses dot reload current scene. So that's what's actually going to reset everything, okay? And then last but not least, we're going to run that same function. We're going to create the recover one. All right. This again is going to reload in all of the data we need. All right, so let's get started creating that recover and save function now. I think the first one we should do is the save one. That'll kind of help it make more sense. So let's do a function. Then we're going to do save. Whoopsie. Don't forget your colon. All right, so now we have to basically save everything into that config file that we created in the variables. All right, to do that, it's pretty easy. We just do config dot set value, and then we give it a key, or pretty much the data that's inside of it. You can have multiple, but we're all just going to keep everything in saved data. All right, so that's going to be the name of the data. Then we need to give it a key value for that specific data in there. And this first one is going to be called player underscore money. Now you don't have to make it the same as the variable, but I kind of do it just so it makes more sense. And then again, do player underscore money. All right, perfect. And that's how we're going to save all the values. So to do this a little faster, we could do, again, copy the whole thing, paste it below. So this next one is going to be the actual inventory of the player. So we're going to do player underscore inventory underscore array. And if you remember, this isn't being held currently in this script. It's going to be inside of our inventory one. So what we're going to do is we're going to call that script global inventory dot current player inventory. Okay, so we're pretty much just setting that array to that current player one. All right, it's as easy as that. But let's go ahead. I still have the other one copied, so I'm going to paste. Let's do our next value. So now we need the saved day. So let's go ahead, do saved underscore day. And then for the value here, just like we did with the other one, we need to grab the global script for time. So global time dot days passed. Perfect. And there we go. Let's keep going. We have another one. So this one here, this one is going to be current plants in game. There we go. And this value is in here, so we don't need to call another script. We just need to type our current plants in game, just like that. Perfect. Let's keep it going. A couple more. We also need the current buildings. So let's do current buildings. There we go. Type in current buildings. Perfect. Then we're going to go ahead to the next one, which is current animals. Current animals. All right, and this is also in here, so let's go ahead. Current animals. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so now that we have all our values saved, now we are going to need to actually do the save on the file itself. To do that, pretty easy. Just do config, but instead of set values, we are going to do dot save. All right, and inside the parentheses, we're going to set the path of the file, which is going to be double quotes, res, colon, / saved data dot cfg. Now make sure that's correct, because if it isn't, it's not going to know where to save it. Okay, but there you go. That's going to be your saved data. Now, if you wanted to like encrypt this data so the player can't mess with it, you totally can. There's a lot of different ways you can do that in Godot. I will have future classes and tutorials on that, but for now we're just going to leave it as is. All right, so that's going to be everything in our save. Now we need to create that recover one. Okay, the recover one's going to be a little similar. We're going to go ahead, do function recover now. Should see those errors go away once we build this. So I do a pass here, it should go away. Yep, see how there's no more errors? That's because we now created it. Awesome. Let's go ahead now and do everything we need for recover. Recover is going to be a little different, but somewhat similar. We need to create a variable called data. We need to equal it to config dot load this time. So instead of like that dot save, we are now loading in that data. All right, and to make sure it's the same one, just simply grab that there and just paste it in with the double quotes. And there you go. Awesome. All right. Next up, we need to make sure that the data loads back correctly. To do that, it's just a simple if statement. So if data equals capital OK, just like that, then we can go ahead and assume it's correctly returned. All right. Now we need to set all the values. So let's just do our values, such as player money first. There we go. We're going to equal that to the config dot get value this time, not the set value. Then tell it exactly where it is. So it's going to be in saved data. And then we need to add the key so we can get that data, which if you remember is going to be player money. So I'm just going to copy player money and just paste it right in. And there we go. That's how we can get our data back from the saved file. Perfect. So now we need to do this with all the other values we saved. So I'm going to copy this and just paste below. So this one here is going to be from global inventory. So we need to get basically this. So I'm just going to simply take that there. Our global inventory dot current player inventory, paste it in right here. And then what we'll do is, of course, take the key name, paste it in where player money is, and there we go. Awesome. So that's going to return our saved data for current player inventory. Awesome. All right. So at the end of there, let's go ahead. Let's do the next one. I still have the original, or no, I don't have the original saved. I'm just going to copy that real quick, paste that in. So for the next value, this is going to be for the global time or days past. So I'm going to take that, just like we did before. I'm going to paste it in right here. Perfect. Then I'm going to grab the key, which is saved day, and just paste it in right there. Awesome. Perfect. I'm going to grab that player money again, paste it below, and then we'll just continue. All right. So the next one is going to be current plants in day. So I'm going to go ahead, find that current plants in game. And then I think I'm just going to copy it here, paste it in right there, and there we go. Awesome. This time I'm going to copy this one here and paste it below. All right, so the next one is going to be current buildings. Let's go ahead, current buildings. Take that current buildings because I'm pretty sure it's the same name. Yes, it is. It shows it highlighted. I'm going to paste it in right there. Perfect. All right, almost done. One more. Let's copy that whole line, paste it in below. All right, this is going to be for current animals. So let's go ahead, type in current animals, copy current animals, paste it in the quotes, and there we go. Awesome, perfect. So that's going to be everything for our recover function, all right? And remember, this is going to be called in other places too. I think we also have some await ones as well in the other scripts we have, but they should no longer be read, all right? Awesome. All right, last function, this is going to be reset data. All right, so this is going to be similar to restart, but instead we are going to do reset this time. Our restart data is going to be ran when we restart the day, all right? But when we reset the game data, that's going to restart everything, even our saved ones here, all right? So let's go ahead and create that real quick. Let's do function reset underscore game underscore data, all right? Empty set parentheses, colon, and there we go. So this is going to be a pretty big one because we need to reset all the values before we save things, all right? So let's start on the top. Let's do days money. We're going to equal that to 0. Then we're going to have player money. Equal that to 0. I'm going to make some more room so we can center this up a little bit. There we go. All right. Next one, player health. We need to reset all those as well. So player health and energy, we got to reset. Player health to 10. Player energy to 25. Below that, we're going to do current animals, equal that to an empty array. Then we're also going to do current plants in game, also equal that to an empty array. And then we're going to do current buildings. And if you remember, our default value is an array with 2 nulls in it. Remember to separate them with commas. There we go, perfect. Below that, we're going to go ahead. What are we going to do? We are going to do our player in UI equal that to false. There we go. We're going to do player fishing. Also equal that to false. What else? We are now going to set all of our values, okay? So this is going to be kind of the same thing. We don't really have to type them all out necessarily. So what I'm going to do is we are just going to copy everything we want to reset. So let's just take all these set values and the save. So just take everything from the top, bring it on down, copy that, and we're going to paste it in. We might need to change a couple things, but I think it'll be okay. Paste it right there. Perfect. All right, so the money, we already reset the money. The player default inventory, this is player current inventory, so we need to set this to default now. Player default inventory, there we go. So that'll set it back to the default. For days passed, we're actually just going to make this equal 0 because no days have passed. All right, perfect. Current plants in game is good. Current buildings is good. Current animals is good. And then the save pile, perfect. And then we need to do pretty much the same thing we did before. We need to have what we have up here, the get tree, .reload, current scene, and recover. So let's take that. Let's copy that. Let's paste this here. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So let's go ahead now and let's test this out. We might need to create the default file here, but it might auto create it. Let me just double check. So let's go to main real quick. And what we're going to do is we are going to do this little button here, run current scene. Let's click that. If it errors us out, then we will know we'll have an issue. If not, that's good. Let's close this. All right. Let's double check where that script is. I'm going to roll down here. And it should be somewhere. Should be our save file. If not, we will go ahead and we will create it. Let's see where it would have put it. I don't see it anywhere. It should be at the top. If it isn't, though, then we will go ahead and add a new one. Doesn't look like it's there. So it looks like we will go ahead and just create it because it looks like it's not saving it. It's just loading it up. We might have to go ahead and Control S. I thought I already saved all these. Let's double check. There we go. Let's go ahead, hit play again, one more time. See what our debugger reads. Division decimal, yep, I think we're okay. Okay, and then what we should do is make sure that's all saved there. Awesome, okay. All right, let's go ahead and create that folder file now. It's gonna be pretty easy. Let's go ahead, or you know why I think it's not doing any of this is because we're not actually running any of this yet. So we go to our stats. These aren't actually being ran yet in the process or the ready. Now the ready looks like it's recovering it. So if it's recovering it, oh, that's why, because it doesn't exist. We're never getting our okay. So it's not doing any of this. All right. But we can fix that real quick. That shouldn't be too hard. We're just going to create a simple config. All right, to create that config file, let's simply go ahead. We're going to right click on our rest folder right over here. We're going to go to create new, and we are going to create that text file. All right. Make sure to save this as the same name we have, which is saved, all lowercase, and then data, capital D, data. Make sure to do the .cfg at the end of it. All right, just like that. Go ahead. Enter that, perfect. You should see that save data.cfg right here. So go ahead, double click that, and it should open up to a blank page. All right, awesome. I'm gonna get rid of the debugger so we can see it a little better. Awesome. So for this config file to work correctly, we need to give it an array at the top. Type in the name of it, saved data. Perfect. Then below it, we're gonna go ahead and do our player underscore money. And all these values are going to be the keys that we have. We need to give it a placeholder such as 0 for now. So we have player money. If we go back to player stats, we should see everything, which is, where is it? Player money on the top here. Player inventory array. So let's just copy that. Paste it below, equal it to 0. Let's do that for each one. Next one is saved day. So copy that. Paste it below, equal it to 0. Another thing to do just to keep things organized, I would just add an enter in between there so it looks a little nicer. Below that, I'm gonna get rid of that space as well. Let's do the next one. Get the next key, which is current plants in game. Paste it, equal it to 0 also. Go to stats again, current buildings. Let's go ahead, paste that, equal it to 0. Next one. Current animals. All right, awesome. That should be 6. Perfect. Equal it to 0. Now, because these aren't formatted correctly, I don't think it's going to like it. So what I would do is I would simply save this real quick. All right, save that, go back to our global stats. And we don't need to do this every time, but we might just do it for the beginning real quick. And that is to just save the data before we recover it. So if I go ahead back over here, we're just going to call our save function inside of our recover function. Because if you remember, this is going to run on ready. If we scroll up on ready, it's going to run that. It's also going to run it in other scripts as well. But to make sure we have the data actually saved, which is the default data, I'm just going to put that right there. We'll get rid of it after we run it one time, but you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to go ahead, run current scene. I'm selected in the main, as you can tell. Go ahead, run that. We shouldn't get any errors. Awesome. Closing that. I had a couple little prints here. We might have not added those. It's going to ask you if you want to discard local changes and reload. You always want to hit this here so it saves the correct data. Okay, awesome. Now go back to your saved data, and there you go. See, now this is all the default. All right, perfect. So we can go back to our global stats, go back to that save, get rid of that. We don't want that there. Perfect. And we're also going to get rid of my little print I had here as well. I was just using that for testing. You can keep it there if you want to, that's up to you, but leave everything the same. Save what you got, perfect. Then go ahead, run this as well, run it again. Let's make sure the data doesn't overwrite. Go back to save data, and perfect. Because the data didn't change, it didn't give you that notification. Now it is going to give you that notification every single time. There's ways to turn it off, but I just find to hit the discard button, and then it will go ahead and reload any changes, all right, which is great. But here we go, there's our saved data. All right, as you can see, it has everything here in our inventory, all the nulls, and then current default tools. We have our saved day to 0, current plants, nothing, current buildings, null and null, and also our current animals. Awesome. All right, let's go back to our stats, save what we got again, close our debugger, maybe go back to 2D view, and looking good so far. All right. So this is another script we're going to be creating. It is one of the most important scripts in the entire game. It is going to be the player script. This script is going to be responsible for anything and almost everything that has to do with the player. We're going to start off by creating the script itself and attaching it to the player node. Then we're going to go ahead and add all the variables that the player is going to need to function correctly. Then we're going to create a bunch of functions to move, animate, use tools, fish, get hurt, plant crops, and many more. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started creating the player script. All right, so let's go ahead and select our player node, our main node of it right here. Let's go ahead and add a script. You can leave the name as player.gd, hit create, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's remove everything except for the extends character body 2D on the top. Let's add a couple variables. Let's go ahead and we are going to go ahead and add a couple of exports. So at export, this is going to be our variable for our player speed. So speed, we will equal that to 100 for now. Let's create another one. This one is going to be for friction. So variable friction, equal that to 1 for now. Another add export. This one is going to be for our acceleration. I might spell this wrong, but that's okay. Acceleration equal 1. Then let's go ahead, do another at, and this one, instead of an export, we're going to do an on ready, and you'll see why in just a bit. This will be for our animation sprite 2D, so animation underscore sprite underscore 2D, all right? And we are going to make this equal animated sprite 2D. Go ahead and make sure it's the right one, not a 3D, a 2D. And then we will just equal that to our current animated sprite 2D, which is inside of the body node right over here. So just drag and drop that right there. Perfect. Awesome. And there we go. So now let's keep going. Let's add a couple more variables. The next couple is going to be called current direction. And this is going to be the current direction that our player is facing. So once we're moving around, this will change, of course. We will equal that to capital down in quotes. Then we're also going to go ahead. We're going to create another one. This is going to be a bool called using underscore tool This will be false starting off. Then we're going to also go ahead, create another variable. This one is going to be called ready underscore to use tool. All right. And the reason we have this bool is because we are going to need a little bit of wait time in between using the tool. All right. Because we don't just want to hold down the using tool button. We want to be able to click it over and over again and have a little bit of space in between using it. All right. Awesome. Let's go ahead and create another one. This one's going to be called tool underscore that underscore uses underscore energy. All right, because certain tools are going to use energy and certain ones are not. I think the water might not use energy, and also any resource we use, because we don't just want to be handing resources in certain spots and be using up energy for that. We want to only use energy with our current tools, okay? And that is going to be set to false starting off. All right, perfect. Then we're going to go ahead, create another variable. We're going to call this player underscore is underscore hurting. And this is just going to help us determine whether or not we can get hurt again. Okay? Awesome, perfect. Let's go ahead, create a couple more. This is going to be another variable. This is called passed underscore out underscore scene. All right? And this is going to represent the scene that we are going to play once our character passes out from either losing all their health or losing all their energy. This is not created yet, but we are going to make it equal a preload. And we will go ahead and pass this in once we have it created. So we will leave that blank, okay? It'll stay errored for now, but that's okay. The next thing we're going to create below it is going to be a variable called in underscore fishing underscore state. So when we are actually fishing, which is going to be in that fishing UI, all right? At first, we will, of course, equal that to false, all right? Awesome. A couple more left. So let's go ahead, add some spaces for that. We are going to create a couple more exports. So at export, variable. Oops, make sure to space it out. We're going to call this dirt underscore tilemap underscore layer. All right, perfect. And this is going to represent a tilemap layer. So go ahead, tilemap layer. Perfect. All right. Then we're going to have another at export variable. This one is going to be called plants underscore tilemap underscore layer. Just like the one above, we're going to make this a type of tilemap layer. Then we're going to create another variable. We're going to call this mouse underscore position. And this is going to be a vector2, which we will leave blank, just equal it like that, perfect. We're also going to create another variable. This is going to be called cell position. And all these ones here in this section are going to represent basically when we are placing plants, when we are using the till to the ground, and eventually also placing fences as well, okay? But we need a couple variables here to make all these calculations correct. All right, so this is cell position, and let me add a little underscore there. Give it a colon. And this is also going to be a vector2, but this type is going to be a vector2i. And the reason we're making it a vector2i is because we are going to be working with the tilemap layer. And the tilemap layer's values have to be a vector2i, not a vector2. You'll see that in action once we get started creating that function. All right, let's create another one. This one is going to be called cell source ID, and that is going to represent the ID of the cell, which is going to help us basically change the cell to different tile layers, all right? And this is going to be a type int. Okay, awesome. Then we're also going to need a local underscore, whoops, don't forget the variable local cell position. And we're going to go ahead, just make this a vector2, just like that, perfect. All right, and then the last one for this is going to be a variable. We're going to call this distance, which is going to be the distance of how far away we are from a tile. That's going to be important because we don't want to be basically planting crops in the wrong location. We want to plant them in the ones that are right next to us, and that's what we're going to use with this variable. All right, two more variables left. This one here is going to be called variable yellow underscore plant underscore scene. And just like we have our preload above, that's going to be like this. This is going to represent the yellow plant that we can plant, okay? Which again is going to be a preload. So preload, give it a set of parentheses and empty quotes for now until we have it created. We don't want to mess with it, okay? So there's our preload for yellow plant. We need another one as well. This is going to be for the fences we can place. So variable, new underscore fence underscore scene. And we're going to equal that again to a preload with an empty set of quotes inside of it, okay? Just like that. Perfect. Awesome. And that's going to be all of our variables for this script. Go ahead and save what you got so far. Don't worry if our preloads are errored. That's okay. That is expected for now. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next function. So we have all our variables here. We're going to start off with our input function. So that's going to be the function basically that gets whether or not we select an input. The only inputs we are going to have in this game is going to be our movement, which is going to be A, W, S, and D, which is going to move us up, down, left, and right. And then we're also going to have our spacebar key, which is using the current selected tool or item we have. All right, so let's add a couple spaces here. Let's start this off. Let's go ahead. Let's do right here. Let's do our function. And let's do get underscore input. All right. And then we're going to go ahead, give it a colon, and we're going to start it off. So to get our actual input, we need to create a variable for that. So do variable. We're going to call this input, equal it to a vector2, empty set of parentheses. Then we're going to start off with a couple if statements. All right. We have if, and we're going to say if capital I input dot is action pressed, and then within there we're going to select the input we want. Now we don't have any inputs currently. We can add those real quick. All we have to do is we simply go ahead to project settings, go to our input map, and we're going to go ahead and add a new input. This one here is going to be called use tool. Perfect. Go to add. This is going to be our spacebar one. Click the little plus button next to the trash can. Select the space key, hit OK, and there we go. Let's add the rest of them as well while we're here. So we have use tool. We need the walking ones now. So we're going to do walk. Let's say walk right for this one. Go ahead, give it a key. I'm going to do the D key. There we go. Let's go ahead, add another one. Let's do walk left. Add that there. Walk left. This is going to be the A key. Then let's go ahead. Let's do walk. And let me double check what I did. If I did walk down and up, yes I did. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do walk down. And that's going to be our S key. There we go. And then the last one is going to be walk up. So walk up. Let's give it the W key. There we go. Perfect. So we have use tool, walk right, walk left, walk down, and walk up. Let's close this here. Perfect. So now inside of this if statement, inside the parentheses for is action pressed, double quotes, this one is going to be that use tool, which is right there. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So let's give it a colon to the end of that if statement. Now inside this if statement, we're going to add another if. This is going to check and see if we can actually use a tool, which is going to be ready to use tool. If that equals true, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set using tool equal to true, because we are now using that tool. Then we're also going to do ready to use tool to false, because we don't want to keep using it. So equal that to false, just like that. Perfect. Then we're going to call a couple functions that we're going to create later on. This is going to be some things for placing things. So this one's going to be called get cell. We're going to do get cell under mouse, which is going to just be exactly where the cell is in front of us. We don't have that function yet, but we will create it later on. We're also going to do another function called add tilde soil. And this is only going to basically happen if we are having the till as the active tool, which we will have an if statement inside of that function to do that. And then we're going to have one more function, which is going to be add underscore fence _2_farm, which is going to be the adding the fence if we have, of course, that selected. We could add those if statements in here, but that's going to make this function a little too big. So I'm just going to add that inside of each of those. On top of that, we're also going to need our hitbox. So we're going to have if tool that uses energy equals true, because of course all the other ones aren't going to do that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get our hitbox, which should be right over here, our hitbox collision shape. So we need to open that up, grab that collision shape 2D inside the hitbox. And what we're going to do is we're going to set disabled and equal that to false. Perfect. We're also going to go ahead and set our global stats of our energy, if you remember, so dot player energy minus equals 1, because we are losing energy now since we are using a tool that uses energy. All right, perfect. So that's going to be the first input. All right, awesome. So then we're going to have another input though. We're going to have an if. We're going to do input, and we might not actually use this one, or no, we might use this one. This is going to be input dot is action just pressed. And this is one we did not add. This is going to be eat food. We are going to have a specific key for eating food. And I think what we could do is make it the E key. So let's go back to our project settings. Let's add that real quick. Let's just call this something like eat food. There we go, add that in. And I'm simply going to make that the E key, just like that. Hit OK, perfect. Let's close that. All right, let's add that in there, just so we don't forget. Eat food. And we're going to have a function for this. We could put this entire thing inside of here, but like I said, I don't want to make this function too big. So we're just going to add the function, and we will add it later. We're going to say check to eat food. And that, again, is only going to work if we have a current food item selected, and of course, that we have enough to eat in the first place. Okay, awesome. Don't forget to get it a colon. Perfect. All right, now let's get along to the movement ones. This one is going to be some elifs. So we're going to do an elif here. So elif, and we're going to say input dot is action pressed. And this time we are going to do our walk left. So let's go ahead, walk left. And then we are going to do our animated sprite 2D dot play, and then inside of it we are going to do, I think it is walk left. We can double check it by selecting the animated sprite 2D right here, which should be walk. These are all lowercase at the beginning. Walk left. All right, I'm going to close that up. This is going to be lowercase walk left. Walk left. All right, perfect. That's going to play the animation we want. Awesome. And then we're also going to go ahead inside of here. We are going to set our direction, so current direction. We're going to make that equal left. Perfect. And then right after that, we're going to do our input dot x, and we are going to minus equal that to 1, which is going to help us actually move the player, because we are now moving negatively on the x-axis. All right, perfect. Then let's do an elif, and then we're going to do capital I input dot is action pressed. Same thing, this one here, we are going to do, let's do walk down. So walk down. We'll make sure to have it in quotes though. Walk down. There we go. Give it a colon. I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can see a little better. All right, so in this, we're going to simply do animated sprite 2D dot play. Oops, it looks like I forgot a W there. Should be capital walk down. There we go. Yep, perfect. But this one here is going to be the lowercase. Walk down. Perfect. Or is it walk back? Let's double check. Let's go into our animated sprite 2D again. Look for that. It's walk back. All right. Yeah, we don't have a walk down. We have a walk back. Or maybe this one is walk front, actually. Yeah, this one's walk front. Oh well, we'll fix that. So this is walk front. Looks like we changed that. All right, there we go. And the other one's walk back, I guess. So I'm going to close that up. There we go. All right, then next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead, current direction. We're going to make this equal, and this is going to equal, I think we're going to do down, just so it matches up with the actual pressed we did. So down, just like that. And then we're also going to set the input, so input dot y equals, or plus equals 1 this time. Perfect. All right, so we have walk left, we have walk down. Let's do the next one, another elif, input dot is action just pressed, or just is action pressed. We want to do the, now we'll just do is action pressed. And we'll do double quotes. And this one here, we're going to do, I think it was walk up. Yep. Perfect. And then we're going to go ahead inside of here. Let's go ahead and do animated sprite 2D dot. And we're going to do play double quotes. This one's walk up, and I think we did walk back for this. Walk back. Perfect. Don't forget your semicolon there. And then we're going to do current direction. Equal that to, let's do up for that. Because technically we're walking up. Awesome. And then we are going to need our input. So input dot y. And this one is going to be minus equals 1 this time, okay? Because if you remember, Godot is the opposite for up and down. Perfect. So let's do the last one. That is going to be walk right. So let's go ahead. Elif input dot is action pressed. And we're going to go ahead, do walk right here. There we go. Inside of it, animation sprite 2D dot play quotes, and we're going to do walk right. And then current direction. Equal that to double quotes of right. We're going to do input dot x plus equals 1. Perfect. And then last thing underneath, still inside the function, we are just going to simply return our input. So return input. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. Looks good. We do need to add one more thing though to all of our elifs, and that is going to be the using tool, because we don't want to be moving while we're using a tool. So a simple way we can do that is just add an and do and using tool equals false. All right. Because if we are using the tool when we're moving, that's not going to look very good. And what you can do is simply copy it from the beginning of the and, paste it into each one of our elifs. All right, perfect. Awesome. All right, and that's going to be everything for our get input function. Looking good so far. Save what you got, and there we go. All right, let's work on the next function. This is going to be the process function. All right, so anything that's going to update continuously in the game for the player. So let's add a couple spaces here. All right, so let's do function underscore physics process, and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is start off with an if statement. We're going to say if global stats dot player is fishing equals true. Then we're going to ensure that we do not do anything after this. To do that, we're going to do an await, and we're going to say player or play underscore tool underscore animation. And once we make that function, that's going to have a specific if statement in there, seeing if we are playing our fishing tool animation. So it will continuously play that. And then we're also going to do our animated sprite 2D dot pause, all right? Because we want to pause the fishing one. Okay, awesome. There we go. And then what we're going to want to do, so it doesn't go ahead and update anything else throughout the game, we're going to do a simple return. All right, awesome. Now if this isn't happening, then we're going to do an else. And we're simply going to go ahead and do our animated sprite 2D dot play to resume anything we're playing. All right, because again, we want to stay in that fishing animation if we are fishing. And if we're not, then we want to go ahead and continually play the other ones. So that's just a little safety net we have there. Then we're going to go ahead and start adding a couple things for the movement, such as var direction. And we're going to equal that to our get input. So we're grabbing that input value we calculated inside this function above. So we're getting that value. And with that value, we're going to play certain animations and move the player based on it. But the first thing we'll do is check to make sure our tool is being used. So if using tool equals true, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to find our tools area, which is inside of our tools node right up here. And we're going to find the collision shape of that area 2D, paste it in there. And all we're going to do is set that disabled to false. Because if you remember, our default value for this is enabled because we don't want to always be using the tools. We only want to use it when we have using tool equals true. All right, so we're equaling that to false currently. Next up, we're going to do an await, and we're going to await for our play tool animations, which is this one right here. I might just copy it so we don't have to type it out. Perfect, because we want to make sure we play that tool animation before we continue. Then we're also going to do await dot animation sprite 2D dot animation finished. That ensures that it does finish. Then we're going to get our tools, which is right up here. Tools. We're going to make this invisible because we know that the animation is over now. So tools visible equals false. Then we're going to go ahead, set using tool, and we're going to equal that to false. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to set our timer tool to start. So if we scroll down here, we should see timer tool. We can just take that, drag it in, dot start, just like that. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to find our collision shape. So this one here, collision shape, and we're going to go all the way back, and we're simply going to make this disabled, equaling it back to true. All right, perfect. So we're basically enabling it, playing the animations, setting the timer, and then turning it back to true, so it no longer is effective. All right, awesome. So that's going to be it for that. Now we can move on to the actual movement using that input we talked about. So we're going to do an if direction dot length, and we're going to say if that is greater than 0, so greater than 0, and oops, make sure it's lowercase though, and our global stats dot player in UI, because we don't want to move the character if we're in the UI. Remember, we only want to move the character if this equals false, okay? And then in here, what we're going to do is we're going to set our velocity, which is coming from the character 2D node, so we can only use velocity in this, equal velocity dot lerp, which is going to help our calculation for movement. Inside the parentheses for lerp, we're going to do direction, which we calculated before, dot normalized, which helps it from its float value, times the speed that we have, comma, the acceleration that we have. All right, perfect. So that's what's going to be moving our character, okay? But we're also going to want an else in case we aren't moving, which is going to be the idle position. And what we're going to do, and also the tools position as well, if it's an else, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set our tools dot position equal vector2 capital V, and we're going to set this to 0. So 0, comma 0. So we're just resetting our tools position if we're not moving anymore. All right. You'll see how this moves once we get into the actual using tool or replay certain animations based on your direction. But what we're going to do is we're going to do if current direction. We're going to say equals down, capital D down. Then what we're going to do inside of here is we're simply going to set our animated sprite 2D dot play, not pause, play to the animation of idle down. Or is it down, or I think it's front? I kept on getting that confused. Let's double check it. I'm pretty sure it's idle front, and I think it's idle back for the other way. Yeah, idle front. Awesome. I'm going to close that. So idle front is when we're going to play that. We're also going to have another if, current direction. This time we're going to check and see if it's equal to up, which I think is back, but we named it up here. And then animation sprite 2D dot play. And inside of here, we're going to do idle back. And we can double check that simply by going to the animation player again. Idle back. There we go. Make sure that's spelled correctly or it's not going to play the right one. Okay, awesome. I'm just going to copy this because we can just copy it and do it for the other two. Paste that as well. There we go. A little faster. All right, so this one here, let's do right, capital R. And then we're going to do idle right for this. I'm just going to change that to idle right, capital R. Now the one below it, let's do the left one. Left, idle left. Perfect. All right, awesome. So that's going to help it for the idle directions. And outside of the if statement, but still inside the else, what we want to do is you need to set our velocity to 0, which we can do by velocity equals velocity dot lerp. Inside of lerp, all we're going to do is set a vector 2 to dot capital 0, comma, to our friction. There we go. Perfect. So that's going to actually freeze the player when we're in the idle position. Okay? Awesome. Now that we have all the movement, though, we do need to do something to actually initiate that movement, and that is using a pre-built function in here, which is move and slide. All right? That's going to actually move the character on the X and Y plane correctly. And then what we'll do on top of that is we will do update underscore tools underscore in underscore use. And that is a function we are going to create that's going to continuously run and, of course, update whether or not we are using the correct tool that we have selected in the inventory. Okay? Awesome. But let's continue. We're almost done with this function. This is going to be outside of all the ifs right down here. This is going to be a if for our global stats dot player health. And we are going to go ahead, do a less than equal sign to 0 for that. Or global stats dot player energy less than equal to 0. And then inside of there, what we're going to do is we're simply going to set our variable of passed out equals passed out scene that we have not created yet, dot instantiate. Now we spell this wrong. instantiate. Hopefully that's spelled right. Instantiate, add sibling, and passed out in there because we're creating this scene. The scene is not an actual object until we initiate it. So we're kind of like creating a new player almost, but its only use is going to be showcasing that the player passed out. We're also going to set the location, so passed out dot global position. Make sure you spell everything correctly or you're going to get some errors. Equals our global position, which is just our global position. And then last but not least, we are going to queue free. So we are getting rid of the current player. And this passed out scene is going to represent the player. All right, awesome. Last couple if statements. We have if our global stats dot player using kitchen. And that's just going to be a specific scene in the game equals true. Then we're going to go ahead and we are going to make our kitchen UI, which we do not have yet, but we will have it. I'm just going to type this in for now. We might need to change it later. Kitchen UI. And then this is going to be a dot visible equals true. Again, we don't have this kitchen. It doesn't exist yet. I'm going to take this again. We're going to copy this entire if statement, simply paste it below. And this other one here is going to be basically turning it off. So if kitchen UI equals false, then we're going to go ahead and make it false here as well. Perfect. And that's going to be everything for our process physics function. It's a lot. Make sure you got it down. Remember, you can always check the source code, but looking good so far. All right, let's go ahead and create the next function. So this next function is going to be the play tools animation. This is going to basically play the correct tool that you have selected and also locate it and move it to the right position. Because if you remember, if we go to our 2D view, all the tools are located directly in the center of the player. But when we are facing a certain direction and then selecting the space key, that tool should be facing whichever direction we are facing, okay? So it's either going to be on the right side, the left side, up, or down, okay? So we need to add that into the script. So let's go ahead and create that function for it. All right, I'm going to add a couple spaces so we can see it a little better. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's do function play underscore tool underscore animation. And that should resemble the same function we have. So I'm going to copy that, Control F it, just to find it, make sure we have it located. Yes, it is. I'm just making sure we spelled it correctly everywhere. Looks like I just did play tool animation. Awesome. Let's go ahead, put a colon there. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we need to find which direction we're facing. So let's do if current direction equals quotation marks of down. Then what we want to do is we need to move things around. So the first thing, before we do that though, we need to play the correct animation. So let's do animation sprite 2D dot play. And this is going to be, I think it's tool front or is tool down. Let's double check it, select the animation, find tool front. Yep, so tool front and then tool back. So I'm going to close that. Tool front is going to be for down. Awesome. And then we also need to move the position because we need to make that tool move down a little bit from the center. So let's take the tool, put it right there. Let's do tool.position equals vector2. And we're going to go ahead and do -2 for the x and then do a comma, 10 for the y. And we might need to adjust these, and you can always adjust these too as well when you start playing the game and testing where these things are. That's going to move the actual position. We also need to rotate it correctly as well. To do that, I found the best way is to change the scale and then the rotation degree. All right, so let's again take the tools, drag and drop right here. The first thing we're going to change is going to be the scale. So scale equals vector2. And we are just going to simply do a -1, which helps flip it, and then a +1 right there. Perfect. Now we need to change the rotational degree. So let's take tools, dot, rotation, oopsie, rotation degrees. And again, we're going to equal this simply to 0 for now. All right, perfect. And that should make it face correctly when we're facing down/front. All right. So let's copy this whole thing, and I'm simply going to go ahead, paste it below. So the next one we're going to do is going to be for up, which is back if you remember. So up, which is going to be tool back. Make sure to capitalize the B, tool back. And for the values for this, the position I found the best ones to use is going to be -3, +10, or this one, nope, this one's -10. So -3, -10, and instead for the scale, we're going to keep -1 there, but we're also going to make this -1 as well, which helps it rotate it and flip it basically. And then we need to rotate it 90, I think we're going to do 90 degrees. Nope, we're just going to leave it at 0 actually. 0 degrees, okay? Awesome. And that's going to be everything for the up, all right? So let's copy the whole thing. Let's do the next direction. And this is going to be for right, all right? And we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep, well, well, we're going to actually change, of course, this to right. There we go. For the vector to a position, we're going to change that -3. And this one is going to be a 10 for X and a 4 for Y. All right. Perfect. And if you wanted to test this out, you totally could. You would just have to, of course, make the tools visible, like the axe or anything inside of it as well. And then all you would have to do is select the main node tools, go to the inspector of it, go to the transform, and there you go. You can then change the positions, the rotations, the scale, all that. All right. All right. Let's continue though over here. So the right, we have 10 and 4 for the position. For the scale, we have -1 and -1. That's okay. But we do need to change the rotation degrees to 90. All right. Perfect. So make sure you have all that for the right. Then the last one is going to be for left. So let's take right. Let's simply do an enter. Paste it. Let's change the right to left. Change the tool in use as well to left. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a -10 here. We'll keep it at +4 for Y though. For vector 2, for the scale, we will do a -1 here, but then a +1 for this, which rotates it correctly or flips it correctly. And then for the main rotation, we will keep it at 90 degrees. All right, awesome. And then after all this happens, what we're going to do is we are going to reset the visibility. So we will take the tools right there, we will do .visible, and we will go ahead and equal that to true. Perfect. And that's how we can go about rotating everything inside the tools correctly so it looks very natural. All right, awesome. And I think that's it for that function. So go ahead, save what you got. Looking good. All right, let's go ahead and work on the next couple functions. So the next function we're going to make is pretty small. This one's just going to be our timeout for our tool. So let's go ahead and actually just create that signal. This is going to be from timer tool right here. Go ahead to the node, go to timeout, double click, make sure it's attached to the main player node, hit connect, and there we go. Awesome. So in here, the only thing we're going to do is we are simply going to go ahead and we're going to set our ready to use tool back to true. All right, just like that. Perfect. All right, because if you remember, we start this up when we use the tool, and then once the timer is done, which is that 0.2 seconds, I'm pretty sure. If you go to the inspector, yep, then it's going to reset that so we can use it. All this is doing is making sure that we can't just hold the key down and be able to use the tool over and over again. We want to have a little bit of a delay in between using it and not using it. Awesome. All right, so the next function though, we're going to create, this one is going to be the update tools in use. So this is going to be basically every time we want to change our tool or the type of resource we're using. All right, so let's go ahead and create that function, and we're going to call it update underscore tools underscore in underscore use, parentheses set, arrow to void, colon. Let's make sure we spelled it right. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go over here and just make sure we have it everywhere else. We should have it in multiple spots, and looks like we do. Perfect. All right, awesome. I might go ahead and remove the S to make sure I didn't accidentally place another one without the S, and it looks like I didn't. Great, I'm going to get rid of that. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and add exactly what we need in here. Luckily, a lot of it is just going to be a repeat of the same if statement. So let's go ahead and do an if, and we're going to say global inventory dot current player inventory, and we're going to do a dot has, which is going to check basically inside of it to see if we have a specific value. And the value we are going to look for is going to be every type of tool. Okay, so we have axe for the name, comma, quotation marks, tool, comma on the outside, quotation marks, selected. All right, and that's very important that we look for if it is selected, because we want to know if it is or is not selected. Okay, awesome. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure this equals true. So all you're going to do is do double equal sign, true, colon, just like that. Perfect. Awesome. And the red should go away if everything's in there correctly. Yep, there we go. So now inside of it, we need to do a simple loop to go through and find it. So we're going to do a for children in our tools, which is in here, our tools dot get children, empty set of parentheses, colon. So we're looking through here and we are going to find, or we're actually going to set all the children dot visible equaling it to false, okay? Because remember, we are going to have to reset each tool once we set a new tool. So if we have all of them turned on or different ones turned on, we need to make sure they're turned off. But after we go through the whole thing, we're going to go ahead outside of the loop. We're going to find the axe one, which is going to be right here. Take the axe, drag and drop, dot visible equal true, all right? Because we want the axe to be visible. On top of that, we're also going to remove from all groups. So remove from, I think we can do remove from all groups and not just remove from group. Should pop up. Remove from all groups. It should be there. Remove from all groups. And you know what? I think we're actually going to create that function. We could remove it from individual groups, but we don't necessarily know which group. So I think we'll just make a function for it. All right. So we'll do that there. Then the other thing we need to do is, of course, add for our area 2D inside of our tools to the group of the axe. All right. So let's take that, drag and drop it. Make sure you're putting it in the right spot though. There we go. We're going to do a dot add to group. And the group we are adding, of course, is going to be the axe. Awesome. And then last but not least, we're going to do is set our bool for tool that uses energy equals true because, of course, the axe does use energy to use. Awesome. So that's how we're going to set all of our different tools that we have in our inventory. Okay? Awesome. So now we just need to do a bunch of else for the other ones. So I'm going to go ahead and just take this whole if. All I'm going to do is enter, paste it there, change the if we have to an elif, just like that, perfect. And then we just need to change the values per the type of tool. So let's do the pickaxe. So let's go ahead, I'm going to do pickaxe, tool select equals true, everything stays the same there. And then we do have to change the actual one here. You can either drag and drop it or type it out. I'm going to drag and drop it. So I'm going to take the pickaxe right there, perfect. Same thing for the one over here. Take the pickaxe, drag and drop it. And then, of course, we want to add it to the pickaxe group. So go ahead, do pickaxe. There we go. And everything else is the same. Awesome. Let's do the next one. Take that entire elif, enter over here, backspace, paste it. Perfect. This one here is going to be for the till. So change the thing here to till. Awesome. And then what we're going to do, we can change this to till while we're here as well. Now we just need to change the actual image itself. So go ahead, take a node, find till, drag and drop it into there. Perfect. Let's do the next one. Drag and drop it into there. Awesome. Whoopsie. Perfect. Let's copy that whole thing again. Now we're going to do the water. So let's go ahead, backspace. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. Let me just make sure we're typing in the right stuff. So for till, we're going to change that to water. We're going to change water down here as well. And then, of course, we need to change the path. So let's go ahead, find the water, drag and drop. And then we will take this as well. Now, it's really up to you if you want to make the water use energy. I still kind of think it's like using a tool, so I am going to keep the energy to true. But if you didn't want to do that, you could totally change that to false. That's completely up to you. All right, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead, copy the entire elif, paste it below, perfect. The next thing we're going to do is fishbowl. So let's go ahead, change this to fishbowl. Perfect. And I'm going to copy that fishbowl, paste it over here. Awesome. And then what we got to do is simply take the entirety over here, take fishbowl, drag and drop it. Perfect. Same thing for down here. Drag and drop it right there. Perfect. And eventually we will change certain things for the fishbowl, but for now we can leave everything as like the others. All right, awesome. Now we got to do the sword, so let's go ahead, take the entire elif, copy it, enter after, backspace, paste it, perfect. Let's do sword now, sword, change the one down here, sword. Awesome, let's take the sprite, let's change it to the right one, sword. There we go. Let's go ahead, change that over there as well. Sword. Perfect. Nice. All right. Now the last one is going to be a little different, and that's because it's going to be basically everything else that is not a tool, such as a resource. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, or actually, you know what, even instead of an elif, what we could do to make it a little easier, we could even just do an else, all right, just like that. Because if it isn't anything above, then we absolutely know it's going to be a resource. But what we do need to do, though, is the same thing. We need to make sure all the other things are turned off. So I am going to take that for loop we have, paste it in. Perfect. We are going to still remove from all groups, so we will take that as well. Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and add to groups just like we did. But this one, we are specifically going to make it be called resource, all right? Which is going to be anytime we are holding some sort of resource, which is anything other than a tool. All right, perfect. But we are going to make the tools that use energy false because we do not want to have any energy lost when we are using something like a resource. All right, perfect. And there we go. Looking good. All right, that's going to be it for this function here. Make sure you got it all. Save what you got. All right, let's go ahead and create a couple more functions. Next one we're going to do, this is going to be another timer timeout. That's going to be the other timer we have, which is the timer herding. So let's select that. Let's go to the node, the timeout. Let's add that onto the script. Perfect. All right, now in here, we're going to simply reset a couple things. The first thing we got to do is we are going to turn off the animation. So let's find the animation, which is the animation player here. This is inside body hurt animated sprite 2D. Simply drag and drop that in there. Perfect. Do a dot play. And we are simply going to play the idle, all right? Because once this starts, once we run into an enemy, we want to reset this once the timer is over. All right, awesome. Next thing we're gonna do is we are also gonna set our bool, which should be player is hurting. And we're going to equal that to false. All right, perfect. All right, awesome. Make sure you got that there. Let's go ahead and do the next function. I'm going to make some room. All right, let's go ahead. The next function we're going to do is going to be our area hitbox. So actually, let's remove these spaces. Let's select our area 2D, or actually, nope, our hitbox area 2D, which is right down here. Select that. Make sure you are selecting it. Go to the node, and we are going to do area entered, all right? Connect that, and there we go. Perfect. All right. Now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we're going to create a little if statement. We're going to say if area dot is underscore in underscore group. And then within there, give it a set of parentheses. And we're going to be looking for the tag of enemy. All right. We're also going to have an and we're going to make sure that player is not already hurting, okay? This is so we actually can get that timeout and not just be hurt over and over again and instantly get hurt. So things we're going to add in here are simply connecting to our global stat script, which is going to be our dot health, player health. Oops, not the energy one. Dot player health. There we go. And we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to do a minus equals 1. All right, perfect. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to set our player is hurting. And we're going to equal that to true. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to initiate the actual animation. So we can just take our little animation up here from the timer, paste that in, and we're simply going to change it from the idle to the hurting. All right, perfect. Let's backspace this. All right, and last thing we're going to do is start the actual timer. So find the timer here on the left, drag and drop it in, go ahead and do a dot start. Perfect. Awesome. So that's going to initiate everything we need for the hurting effect. All right, perfect. All right, so the next function below this one is going to be the eating food function we have, so we can actually heal ourselves in case we get hurt by an enemy. So we're going to do a check underscore to underscore eat underscore food. And this is going to be parentheses set to avoid colon. Awesome. And if we put something here, it should go away for the red. Now let's double check and make sure this is appropriately spelled. I'm going to type it in here, and we should have another spot where this is being called, which is right there. Awesome. All right. So now inside of this, let me add a couple spaces so we can see it better. We're adding a for loop here. I'm going to get rid of this here too, so we don't have it highlighted the whole time. There we go. So we're going to add a for loop here. We're going to say for item in. We're going to say for item in our global inventory dot current player inventory. We're going to loop through it. We need to find whether or not we have the food. So we're going to do that, and we're going to say if our item does not equal null, we need to make sure it's actually selecting something, and our item bracket for which one it is, which is the name. We're going to check the name, and we are going to be looking for whether or not it equals what we are later going to create, noodles. All right, this is a bowl of noodles that we can create and also eat to help heal our player's health and energy. All right, so we're checking to see if that is there. If it is, we also have to make sure it's selected. So we're going to say if item, and we're going to look for if it's selected, which should be the third mark, and we can double check that simply by going to one of the other things, which is 0, 1, 2. So we're checking to make sure it is selected and also that its value is greater than 1. So let's go back here. I think this first one here, we are representing it to make sure that it has more than 1. So yep, so the third item is going to be the amount, which is going to be here. And then the second item will be whether or not it is selected. So we're checking those two values. So first we're checking to see if we have one. So we're going to say greater than 0. All right. And we're going to say item brackets 2, which is the selection, equals selected. All right, perfect. Colon. All right, now inside of here, we're going to go ahead, we're going to do global stats dot player and UI equals true. Perfect. Which is going to be a UI that opens up and says, hey, do you want to eat this bowl of noodles? Yes or no? We're going to create that in a bit. We also need to make the question itself visible. It does not exist yet, but it will. We're going to simply put a placeholder for it, which I'm going to do eat food question. All right, dot visible. And this is something we're going to create after we finish up the script. All right, and then we're also going to do a return. Okay, perfect. Awesome, and that's going to be it for the check food question. Perfect. Save what you got, and looking good so far. All right, let's continue and make a couple more functions. So the next function we're going to create, this is going to be the remove all groups. And remember, this is going to be called anytime we are changing the type of tool we're using. So if we scroll back up to where that's going on, as you can see, we are initiating remove all groups, and then we're adding the correct one. So we need to make this function to verify that we can remove all current groups. So let's make our way down here. All right, let's create this function. Function remove underscore from underscore all underscore groups. Give it a set of parentheses and then an arrow to avoid. Perfect. Awesome. And then we're going to go ahead. Let's make sure that this actually is the same as the other ones. So we should have other ones. Yep, looks like we do. Perfect. All right, let's add everything we need in here. And this is going to be pretty easy. We're just going to basically select our tools, area 2D, simply drag and drop it over here. And what we're going to do is we are going to do a dot remove from group. And then we're going to tell it which group. and we're going to do one for each type, okay? So we know we might have the axe one, so let's have that there. Let's go ahead and add the other ones. So we have axe. Let's do pickaxe now. Then let's go ahead, let's do another one. This one here is going to be for the till. Let's do another one. The one below it, this one can be for the water. Next up, let's go ahead. This one's going to be for the fish pole. And then the next one, let's do the sword. And then the last one, this one's going to be for the resource. All right, resource. Perfect. All right, and that's going to be it for the remove from all groups function. Okay, so then let's go ahead. Let's do the next function. Let's go ahead. We're going to do function, and then we're going to do this one, which is going to be get underscore cell underscore underscore mouse. And this is basically going to be a function that gathers exactly where we are facing with our character. Because if we're going to plant plants, or if we're going to go ahead and select certain things, or even drop down fences, we need to know exactly where on the tile map is that going to happen. And this function below is going to help us determine where that is. All right, so let's give that an empty set of parentheses, and then let's go ahead, let's do an arrow to void, just like that. Perfect. All right. So now we're going to need a couple if statements to decide where exactly we're facing, and let's go ahead and do that. So if current direction, let's go ahead, current direction equals capital D down. So if our character is facing down, then what we're going to do is we're going to set our cell position equal to our dirt tile map layer, and we're going to do a dot local to map, which helps us gather the local position of the map using our position plus a vector2, giving it a little bit of an offset for which way we're facing, which is going to be best at a 0,20. Now we might need to play around with our vector2, but I think this works pretty well for what we're dealing with. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and just copy this entire if statement, paste it below, and do the next direction. All right. So this one here is going to be for down, or not down, this one's going to be for up. All right, so equals up. And then the only thing we're going to change is we're simply going to change our 20 here to a -20, okay? Perfect. Let's go ahead, copy this whole thing, paste it below. Make sure your if statements are correctly formatted, there we go. So now the next direction, let's go ahead and let's do right. So if our character is facing right, then what we're going to want to do is we're simply going to make our -20 here a 0, because our x value is going to be 0, and then our y value is going to be 0, and our x value, because we're facing right, we want it more on the right side, and a simple 20 should be okay for that. All right, perfect. Now let's go ahead, let's do left. Let's copy that. Let's go ahead, paste that there. Let's change the right out for left. Then inside the vector2, let's do a -20. Which is going to be the complete opposite of the one above. Perfect. So that's going to give us our little cell position offset based on the direction that our player is facing. All right. Another thing we're going to add in here, we need to help actually get that distance apart from a vector2. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to simply do a cell source ID equals our dirt tile map layer dot get cell source ID. There we go. And then within there, we are going to use that cell position we calculated. Okay, awesome. So now that we have that there, perfect. Now we need to go ahead and calculate our local cell position, which we are going to do by equaling it to dirt tile map layer dot map to local. Within map to local, we are going to again use that cell position. Perfect. Next up, we're going to go ahead, we're going to use distance, and then we're going to equal that to our global position that we currently are to our dot, which is to distance to. Make sure it is not direction to. Sometimes I always get that messed up. Make sure it is distance to. So distance to. All right, perfect. And then within there, we are going to simply set our local cell position. Perfect. And that is going to get exactly where that current tile is that we are next to, okay? Perfect. All right, looking good so far. Make sure you have everything. Save what you got. All right, 2 more functions left. These are pretty big ones, but they are very important. The first function we're going to do is actually adding tiles for the soil and also for plants if we have seeds currently in our inventory. All right, so let's go ahead and start this off. This one's going to be called function add underscore tilde underscore soil underscore cell. Go ahead, give it some parentheses, give it a void, just like that. Perfect. Awesome. Let's make sure we named this correctly. I'm going to copy the name, paste it in the find. Let's see if we have the other one. Yes, we do. Perfect. All right, I'm going to get rid of this here. All right, let's start this off. I'm going to give it a little bit more room just because this is going to be a pretty big one. So let's start this off with a simple if statement. We're going to say if our distance, and this is calculated above, our distance is greater than, or sorry, if it's less than 30.0, and our cell underscore source ID is not equal to -1. And what that is checking for is if it actually has a cell ID. So if the cell source is not equal to -1, that means it exists. All right, it's not just a non-filled out cell in our tile box. All right, which is good. We want to make sure that there is a dirt cell there. All right, so we're going to do that. Then in here, we're going to actually add another if statement. We're going to say if our global inventory dot current player inventory dot has, and for our dot has, we are looking to see if we are holding our till tool. So if you remember how we do this, we go ahead, we give it a bracket set. First value is the name, which is till. Then we also need to make sure it has selected on it. So we have to have the whole thing in here. So we're going to do a comma, quotes tool, comma, double quotes, selected. All right, we got to make sure it is selected. On top of that, the last value we're looking for is just the 1 because it's always going to be 1. All right, awesome. And then we're going to do is simply make sure it equals true, which means everything there is correct. All right, perfect. So now that we have that, we're actually going to do another if statement. And what we're going to do in here, we're going to say if our dirt tilemap layer dot get cell source ID, or no, this is going to be dot get cell atlas chords. Let's find that. And this is going to verify whether it is the current dirt. So a dirt box that is filled, and we'll show you that in just a second. Let's just finish the thing, which is a cell position. And then we're looking for a specific one in here, which is going to be equal sign of a vector 2i. And we're going to give that a value of 1, 7. All right, and we might need to change this. I'll show you what this represents in just a second. So this is going to represent a specific tile that we have. So if we go, where do we go? If we go to main, and we go to our world, and we go to the, I think it's not land, but I think it's soil. If we go to soil, we are looking for the atlas code, which should be, I think it's going to be this one. See how the atlas code coordinates 3 and 1 actually might be this one. Yeah, 1 and 7. So we're making sure that this is there because what we want to do is we want to till the soil. All right. But this is the untilled soil. But if it's anything else other than this, specifically, if it's, I think it's, we're going to use this one over here. If it ends up being this one, which is not the same atlas chord, if we go to tile set and I zoom in, let's create that one. This one here is going to be the atlas chords 14 and 5, okay? So we only want to till the soil if it's not 14 and 5. We want to make sure if it is 1 and 7, all right? Perfect. So let's go back to our player. Let's stay here. All right, so if it is the correct tile, and I'm going to get rid of that because we already saw it, then we are going to go ahead. We are going to set our dirt tilemap layer dot set tile, which we will do set cell for that. We will first get the cell position that we have calculated. comma, 0, comma, and then we're going to set it to that tilde one we just looked at, which is a vector 2i. And if you remember, it was 14, comma, 5. Okay, perfect. So we are changing it, all right? Awesome. All right, looks good there. Now, we have some other ifs we're going to do, which are going to be outside of that one. Make sure you're putting it on the correct line. This is going to be on the same line as the one defining the global inventory. So make sure it's right here. This one's going to go ahead and start the process of actually planting the seed, okay? So we're still putting this inside the same function just because I think it works a little better this way. We're going to start off with an if statement. We're going to say if dirt tilemap layer dot get cell atlas chords, within there cell position, and then we're going to say if it equals our vector 2i, and we're looking to see if it's already tilde. So we need to see if it's already tilde, which is the 14, comma 5. All right. Or we're going to have an or one, or dirt tilemap layer, and we're going to look and see whether it, oops, let's move that over. Can we move it over? Not yet. If our dirt tilemap layer dot get cell atlas chords, so we're doing the same thing, get cell atlas chords, cell position equals vector 2i, and we're going to go ahead and put the coordinates of 21, comma 7. All right, I think that is going to be the watered tile. So if it's tilde, or if it is tilde and watered, which is the 21, comma 7, then we're going to go ahead, give it a colon. Then we're simply going to go ahead and we are going to start changing it up. First thing we're going to do is we are going to set a new variable to variable current underscore number equals -1. We're going to need this for later, for our item in global inventory dot current player inventory. And we need to locate whether we have the seed, and we need to go ahead and minus it. All right, because we're planting now. But because we're planting it, we are also removing it from our inventory. So we go ahead and do this. For every item we have, we go ahead and do our current number plus equals 1, because we're looping through, but we need to remember which one we're at so we can actually use it. All right, so in this loop, we're also going to go ahead and do an if statement. We're going to say if our item does not equal null, so we want to make sure it actually exists, and our item number that we have, which is 0 starting off, which is the name, equals, and we're going to call this yellow underscore seed, which is the seed we can plant, and our item 1, which should be checking if it is selected, or actually I think this one first is for the resource, so we're going to say equals resource. All right, and then we're going to do the selected one, so and item 1, or sorry, this one's 2 for the resource. If it's selected, let me double check it to make sure we're doing everything right. Yes, so we're going to go ahead and say if that is equal to double quotes of selected, because we don't want to plant something unless it is selected in our inventory. And then last but not least, we are also going to check whether or not we have enough seeds to plant. And there's 2 variations of this we're going to do, because we need to, of course, minus it if it only has greater than 1 left. But if it has 1, then we just want to remove it completely from our inventory. But you'll see that in just a second. But this one is going to be item 3. And then we are going to say if it is greater than 1. All right, perfect. So I know there's a pretty big if statement, but that needs to be checked for this to work correctly. All right. All right, so now inside of this, once we get in there, we know we have the right seed selected and everything. Then we have to go ahead, we have to create a new variable. We have to call this plants underscore location. We have to equal that to dirt tilemap layer dot to global. We need the global position. And then we are going to set the dirt tilemap layer dot map to local. And then within map to local, we are going to set cell position. All right? This is going to help get that plant's location, all right? All right, so once we have that location, then what we're going to do is we're going to have a new for loop. We're going to say for plant in global stats dot current plants in game, because this is saving that value, because even if we close the game and come back, we want to make sure that that plant is still there. We're going to start off in the if and say if plant to, which is going to be the location of the plant. If this plant is already planted, we don't necessarily want to plant this. So this is just a little safety check for that. And we're going to say if plant's location, wherever that is, equals plant's location. Then we're simply going to return, which is going to cancel everything out. So we're not actually going to end up doing anything. So we're going to do return. All right, perfect. Let's see why this is given a red. I think we forgot a and what? Oh, we did double. We need double equals for all these, or it's not going to like it. So we're going to do that there. Perfect, just like that. All right, so we have our check to remove and cancel everything out if the plant location is already there. So if we already have a plant, then we don't want to plant something new, okay? That's what that simple for loop is going to do. Now, outside of that for loop, still inside the if, now we're going to create that new plant. So we're going to say global inventory dot current player inventory. And we are looking for the current number that we calculated, so the current number go around that we have. Don't like how it doesn't save this value. Current number. And then we are looking for 3, which is the amount. We are going to go ahead and minus equal 1 from it. So we have now planted it. We've used one of the seeds we have in our inventory. All right. Now we also need to go ahead and go to our global stats dot current plants in game. We're going to need to add a new thing in here. Dot append. So we're creating a new value in here. And we are creating a new yellow plant. So let's go ahead, give it the name of yellow plant. Yellow plant, and then we're going to do a comma. We're specifying that it is not watered currently, so when you plant something for the first time, it's not going to be watered, so not watered. Then we also have to go ahead and save the plant's location, so we're going to pass in that value, which is going to be plant's location, comma, and then we also need to save the cell location. All right, perfect. And then we're going to go ahead and give it a growth stage, which is always going to be 1 when starting off. All right, perfect. So make sure you have all that there. I'm going to go ahead, next line. Now we need to actually initiate it. So let's go ahead and do that. So now that we have our current plant in our inventory, we need to go ahead, create a new variable, call it new underscore plant, equal that to our yellow plant scene dot instantiate. I always spell this wrong, instantiate. Don't know why it doesn't automatically give it to me. Make sure you spell that right or it's not going to work. Instantiate. Yep, perfect. All right, then we're going to go ahead and we actually have to place this. So we're going to collect farm map, which wherever the player is, the player is eventually going to be right here. So let me just take the player, go to characters, and we're going to find player.tscn, drag and drop player into, we're just going to put him in there. Okay, and then we are going to take the world and drag and drop world's location right here, which should be a $ quotes ... /world, telling it where we want that plant. And we are going to do a dot add child because we want it inside that node, the new plant we have. New plant. All right, then we need the position, so we're going to do new plant dot global position underscore position equal to the plant's location that we calculated. All right, perfect. And then the last thing we do is we simply do a return. All right, awesome. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reset everything and do it in case our item does not equal 1. So we can simply copy a lot of this, or we don't really even need to copy too much of it. We can simply just go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to get out of this, go back twice. So we're going to be right on the for loop, or yeah, we're going to be right on the for loop. And we are going to reset our current number that we have here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do current number. And we are going to make that equal to -1. And then we're going to do a for item in global inventory dot current player inventory, and then we're simply going to do our current number plus equals 1, and then we'll do an if statement and say item does not equal null, and I'm going to say item 0. And you know what? Better to just copy this whole thing so we don't need to type it out. It's going to be the same thing we have in here. So we're just going to take everything we got all the way to the end up here, except for the null because we already added that. We're just going to paste that in just like that. Perfect. But like I said before, this one is going to be for if it doesn't exist or if it has less or equal to 1. So what we're going to do here for that is we're going to go all the way to the end of it where it has the item 3. We're simply going to have a less than symbol, equal sign, and we're going to have 1. All right, and if this is the case, then we're going to go ahead and we are simply going to take this here, go down here, and we're going to go ahead and we are going to do our global inventory dot current player inventory, and then we're going to go ahead, do our current number, which it doesn't like to save it, number. We are going to equal that to null, and then we are going to go ahead and return. All right, awesome. So we should return that. Perfect. So we are removing that. All right. And we should still be able to add this in here. If we don't, we will go back and fix this up. But I think for now we should be okay. All right, awesome. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to add the fences. And it's going to be a simplified version of how we did this, okay? So we're going to go ahead, create that next function. Let's do function. We're going to do add underscore fence underscore to underscore farm, and then simply go in the parentheses minus arrow sign void colon. All right, awesome. And we're basically going to do something very similar to how we did above. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we should check is whether or not this is correctly named. Let's go ahead and do that. Yes, it is. Perfect. All right. We're going to start off with an if statement. We're going to say if our distance is less than 30.0 and our cell source ID does not equal -1, because we want to make sure it actually is a spot, then we're going to go ahead, we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call this current number for fence. We will equal that to -1, just like we did before. Then we're going to go ahead, start our loop for item in global stats, or this one's global inventory, dot current player inventory. We're going to go ahead, we're going to increase our current number of fence. So plus equals 1. And then we're going to go ahead and start off what we did before. We're going to do an if statement. We're going to say our item, first check and make sure it does not equal null. So if it does not equal null, and the item name, which is going to be 0, equals, double quotes, fence, and our item 2, which is selected, so equals selected, make sure to quote it, equals selected, and our item brackets 3 is greater than 0. All right, awesome. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead, create a new variable, and we can call it, let's call it fence underscore location. Let's go ahead, equal that to dirt layer, dirt tilemap layer, dot to global, and we're going to do dirt tilemap layer again, dot map to local, and then within it we are going to do cell position, which we calculated before. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to actually do another for loop to make sure it doesn't already exist, and we're going to do for fence in global stats dot, and we're actually going to be using the same current plants in game. We should have named this something different, but it works pretty well for what it is. We're just going to add everything that we can add externally into current plants in game, and we're simply going to say if fence, which is going to be the location, which is 2, so give it brackets and 2, equals fence location. Then we're going to go ahead and we are simply going to do a return because we cannot place something where something already exists. All right, awesome. Make sure to add double equals there so you don't have an error there. All right, continuing on inside our for loop, or this is going to be outside our for loop actually. We're going to do what we did before. Now we're going to actually append it in there. So global stats again, dot current plants in game, dot append. Let's add the fence. So brackets, double quotes, fence for the name. It's not watered technically. It's never going to be watered. But because it's in the fence, we're going to have this here. So not watered, comma, and we're going to do fence location for the location, comma, and then we should be able to add the cell position. So cell position, and then the growth, which is always going to be 1 for the fence because it doesn't grow. We'll keep it like that. Perfect. All right. So then we have it added in there. Now we're going to go ahead and we're simply going to do an if statement here. If item, and we're going to say 3, it should be location. Let's say that is greater than 1 or 3. That's going to be the sorry, that's going to be the cell position. If it's greater than 1, then we're simply going to go ahead and we're going to set our global inventory. And we're going to do dot current player inventory. Within there, we're simply going to go ahead and do our current number of fence, wherever that is. Current number of fence for fence. Paste that in. We are going to go ahead, minus equals 1. All right, and else we're going to simply go ahead and just make the whole thing equal null because we no longer have any left. All right, so copy that whole thing, paste it there, simply do an equal sign to null. All right, perfect. All right, outside of that, we're going to go ahead, we're going to create a new variable, and this is just going to place it. So let's go ahead and add that real quick, which should be the last part, and we should be good. So we're going to call it new fence, and we're going to go ahead, equal that to new fence scene dot instantiate. Hopefully I spelled that right. Don't think I did because it would let me select it. Instantiate. There we go. All right, instantiate because we're creating a new one. And then we're going to drag and drop world again like we did with the last one. Dot add child. Within there, new fence. Then below that, we're going to go ahead. We're going to do new fence dot global position equal that to the fence position that we calculated, or fence location. Then, last but not least, we're going to do a return. Perfect. Awesome. And that should be it for the entire script. Remember, you can always check the source code. I'm going to get rid of all these extra spots here. We don't need those. We might do some refactoring later down the road, but for now, looking good. Save what you got. I'm going to go back to 2D view. All right, this is the last script that's going to be directly attached to the player. This is going to rest on the bobber node that we created earlier. This script is going to be responsible for initiating the fishing. We're going to add a couple variables for everything. Then we're going to go ahead and create a couple functions to start the fishing and randomize when the fish is on the line. Now let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's get started creating the bobber script. So let's go into the player node. Let's find the bobber, which should be inside the fishing pole. I'm going to close the other ones up. We don't need those open. There's the bobber. Awesome. So let's select the main bobber node. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to attach a new script to it. You can leave the name as bobber.gd. Let's create that. All right. So let's go ahead and remove everything currently here. We don't need that. Let's start off adding a couple variables. First variable is going to be called fish underscore on underscore the underscore line. We're going to equal that to false. All right. Right below that, we're going to create a new variable. This is going to be called new underscore fish. And this is going to be the actual fish that is present once we catch it. So we are going to equal that to a preload. And we are currently going to leave it as blank for now because it does not exist yet. All right. Awesome. So those are going to be the variables we are going to have. The next function we're going to create is going to be called function underscore process. This is going to handle everything that updates throughout it. And what we're going to have in here is a simple if statement for if global stats dot player is fishing. We're just making sure that the player is fishing or not equals true. So if it does equal true, what we're going to do is we are simply going to make the actual bobber node visible. So just take the node itself, drag and drop it, do a dot visible, and we are simply going to make that equal true. All right. We're also going to have an else here, which is going to be whether or not, of course, player fishing equals false. And if that is true, then we are simply going to make this visible equal false. Okay. So let's paste that down there and simply change that to false. Awesome. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to do the actual input for this, similar to how we did the input in the player node. We're going to do function, and we're going to call this just get underscore input. All right. Give it a set parentheses, and then we're going to go ahead. Inside of here, we're going to say if capital I input. We're going to say dot is action just pressed, and we are looking for that use tool we created earlier. All right. Make sure it's in quotes. Use tool. All right. Perfect. If we are using tool, then what we're going to go ahead, first thing we're going to do is we're going to set global stats dot player is fishing, and we are going to set that equal to false. All right. Then below that, we're going to go ahead. We're going to say if fish on the line equals true. So we have a fish that is caught. Then we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call this create underscore fish. We're going to equal that to our new fish dot instantiate. There we go. We're going to create that new fish, and then we are simply going to create that fish in the same location that the player is in. All right. So we're going to have to actually do a couple get parents so we can get all the way to that area. So it's going to be get parent dot get parent again dot get parent, and then we are going to go ahead and do a dot add sibling. All right. Oop, not child. Make sure it's sibling. All right. Sibling. There we go. Perfect. And then we're simply going to throw the fish in there. All right, so we'll create the fish. All right, but because we caught the fish, now we have to go ahead and put it in the right location, determining where we are facing. We're going to want the fish to basically appear behind the player, kind of like they are swinging the fishing pole back and throwing the fish behind them. So to do that, we're going to have to get which direction we are, and we can do that in the same way we did it in the player script with a couple if statements. So we'll do if our get parent, which we have to get that script, so we have to go all the way back. So we're going to do get parent again, dot get parent, dot get, or 3 get parents, get parent, and we are going to get that direction, which is current underscore direction. All right, and we are going to say whether it equals down, and if it does equal down, then what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to set our create fish dot global position equal to our get parent global position. So we'll just take our get parent, 3 get parents, I'm going to paste them below, and then we're going to do a dot global position, but because we are facing down, we are going to add a vector 2 to kind of make up for that space. So we're going to do plus vector 2, and within the parentheses set for that, we're going to do a 0, negative 15, all right, which is going to be above the player, which is what we want if we are facing down. Okay, so let's just copy this whole if statement real quick. Let's copy that. I'm going to do an enter. I'm going to paste it, make sure it is formatted correctly. Now for this one, let's do up. So we're going to take up, and then we're going to go ahead, change the vector 2 for that, which for this one is going to be a positive 15. Okay, so let's copy that whole thing again. Let's go ahead, let's enter, backspace once, paste. Let's change this one. So this one here is going to be for right. So let's go ahead, capital R, right. Then instead of the 15 for the y, we're going to change the x value. So let's make the y 0. But the x value for right is going to be negative 15. All right. And then let's do the last one, which is going to be for left, which is, if you guessed it, it's going to be the complete opposite. So let's just go ahead. Let's paste that there. Let's change this to capital left. And then go ahead, get rid of the minus in the vector 2. Perfect. And that'll ensure that the fish spawns in the correct location depending on where we are located. Looks like I missed a colon there. Let's add that. Awesome though. All right, let's go ahead. Let's do an enter. And we're going to backspace once over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple little things. First thing we're going to do is we are going to set our fish on the line. We're going to equal that back to true. Perfect. And then we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and we are going to do our animation, which should be inside here. Animation player. And I think this fish on the line should actually equal false. It shouldn't equal true because we're turning it off now. So then we're going to go ahead. We're going to take our animation player, which is right here. And we are going to go ahead. We're going to do a dot play. And we're going to play the idle one. Okay, just like that. Perfect. Awesome. And that's going to be it for our get input. Now we just need our timer. Okay, so our timer is going to continuously play even when we are not fishing. All right, so let's go ahead and get that timer, which is right here. Go to the signal for it, select it. We want to go to the source, so select go to source there and select the bobber script. Make sure you're not selecting the player one or it's going to mess it up. All right, but inside this timer, we're going to go ahead. We're going to create a new variable and we're going to call it random underscore val for value. And we're going to equal that to a random I, which is just random I range. And then we're going to say we want a random value of 1 and 4. Okay, so there's going to be a chance that we're going to get 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. And what we're going to do is we are going to set a timer with that. So we're going to take the timer. We're going to set its dot wait time and equal that to our random value. Okay, awesome. Then we're going to have a simple if statement. Say if fish on the line equals, we're going to do equals false, and parentheses random val equals 1 or random val equals 2. Okay, so if equals 1 or 2, then we're going to go ahead and we're simply going to set fish on the line equals true. And we're also going to go ahead and we're going to play the animation for it. So let's go ahead, drag and drop the animation, dot play fish on the line. All right, perfect. And then if you guessed it, we're going to have a simple else right after it. And all we're going to do is set fish on the line equal to false. And then also go ahead and set the idle animation, which I'm going to copy right up here. Simply paste that in right there. Perfect. Awesome. And that should be it. All right. Perfect. Let's go ahead, save what we got. There we go. Looks like it doesn't like this. We didn't do 2 equal signs there. All right, perfect. Let's double check to make sure we have the right settings for our timer, because that will mess us up. Let's select our timer here, go to the inspector, and get rid of that. So we have 3 seconds here, auto start, and we have the signal connected. Perfect. All right, and that should be it for the bobber. So go ahead, save everything you got there. You can close up the fishing pole and go back to 2D view. All right, looking good. I really hope you're enjoying this course, but if you would like to continue it, you will have to become a student at Red Fools Academy. On first sign up, you will get a free 7 days back guarantee. Once a member, you will have full access to not only this course, but all of our courses in game, app, and website development. On top of that, you will get full support from the Red Fools Studio team. A link will be attached to the description, and you can also use this URL as seen below. See you in the lectures!